Hello and welcome to our game here with myself, Shane Stapleton, Michael Verney, as ever joining me. We're going to have Stephen Poacher on talking a lovely bit of football. We're brought to you by OurGameRetro.com. Don't forget, use the promo code OurGame. You'll get 15% off. Maybe you want this sweet little Wexford jersey, maybe that Galway number. Loads of them on the website. You can see it there. 15% off with the promo code OurGame. Delighted to say Stephen Poacher is here now, also joining us now. Stephen, how are things with you?
Not too bad, Shane. Michael, how's things?
How's it going, Steve?
Yeah, do you know what? There's so much to talk about here today, but what a weekend of football it was. I suppose, Stephen, we'll just jump straight into it. We know you're on your lunch hour there, so we'll try and talk a nice bit of football. I'm sure you're under pressure to get back. But I suppose of all the football games, we can go through them all, but what's the most pressing thing on your mind after that weekend of football?
Down need 2 points.
Listen. Second defeat in a row, I suppose, by 6 points this weekend after last week's loss to Derry, so it's a small bit worrying.
Yeah, no, listen, look, James and the boys will know that the first half on Saturday night, Shane probably wasn't good enough, and I suppose when you give players the likes of Paul Conroy the time and the space that he had on Saturday evening, he's going to punish you, he's going to hurt you. And listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I said here, I think it was in this show, I think Galway are a fine side, Shane. I think they're a good side. I think a lot of people are underestimating the quality that they have. They've got some very, 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 very good young footballers, like some Matthew Tierney there. Obviously big Mulkernan at full back's a big blow for them. Massive loss for them. But, Finnerty's playing some stuff. They've got a lot of workers as well. Or Finney O'Leigh as well. It drops back, drops deep. And obviously Conroy now at his age, maybe there's not a full game, 70 minutes in the middle of the field for him. So they played him at 14 the other night and sort of let him come out and roam about. And left Walsh inside, and like it was just another little sort of dynamic to their game as well, which Down struggled to deal with, Shane. And listen, Down's big issue now at the minute is obviously just the players. Obviously not having the Kilcoo contingent involved is a big thing. Young on Owen Murdoch, who's going to be he's going to be a superstar, I think. Anyway, the Burn lad, he's only 19. And I think down supporters hopefully will bear that in mind, because we need to be patient, and like he's coming up against some very seasoned campaigners in Division 2, so it's going to be difficult. But I think the next game, Shane, is a massive junction for both teams. Down travel to Navan in 2 weeks' time, and I think both teams are in desperately need for a win to really kickstart their season.
Do you feel that Down are underachieving? I know you mentioned all the Kilcoo players being out, but losing 112 to 9 points, and obviously back on the back of the Derry defeat. Do you think that Down could be doing something a little bit differently? I know James McCartan is only back in and he's without those players, but is it something where you're very concerned about the season ahead and the direction Down are going in?
Well, look, it's. I think I said last week, Shane, to yourself there, Down club football, I think personally is very, very strong, very, very good. I know you can't gauge it on sort of challenge games and the likes of that, but a lot of clubs would tell you, if they play challenge games against clubs from Tyrone or Armagh or Derry or whatever it happens to be, Down club football is healthy. Kilcoo have showed that it's healthy as well. They're obviously in an All-Ireland final. And for me, and I was chatting to a fellow manager this morning actually about this, Kilcoo have probably had some of their sternest tests in Down. Kerry Duff took them the extra time. Ballyholland took them to 2 points. Bourne really came back at them in the final as well. And Mayo Bridge as well in the first round. They've had some very, very difficult games now. So down club football is in a good state. The problem, Shane, and this is something we were discussing this morning in the staff room actually. The problem, if you look at that Armagh team, Down beat this Armagh team 4 or 5 years ago in the championship, right? Beat Armagh in the championship. But since then, right, Armagh have the same manager, the same group of players. We are now on our third manager, and probably I would say, I think, if I'm right in saying this, I've seen a statistic last week, 80 players Down have used in the last 4 or 5 years, 80 players.
Wow.
That's a phenomenal statistic, Shane, when you look at that. And that's why the top teams are at the top, because there's consistency, there's continuity, and it's something that's been building, Shane, And I think Paddy Talley talked about it, and he was sort of sniggered at it a little bit when Paddy talked about players needing to commit for 10 years. And he's probably right. You need a group of players who are going to commit to the thing, give it everything, make it their life, make it a lifestyle choice. Look, that Armagh team, Shane, at the minute are in tremendously good physical condition. They're one of the best conditioned teams in the country, without a shadow of a doubt, unquestionably. And I remember last year when Roscommon were playing, I remember ringing Peter Donnelly at the time and asking Peter for a bit of advice, just what they were like and what he had seen. And Peter, obviously from an S&C background, prides himself in that sort of level of conditioning. He says, Stevie, they're one of the best conditioned teams in the country. this was last year, so they're a year further on down the line now. So and it's no surprise they're top of the league. It's no surprise at all. Not for me anyway.
Yeah. Michael, do you want to jump in?
No, yeah, you could not help but be blown away by their conditioning the other day. And obviously, it's taken with a caveat that Tyrone are probably 5 or 6 weeks away from their best. They're not long back from a team holiday. But Armagh have definitely hit the ground running. I think importantly the other day as well, beating Dublin was one thing. Consistency has been their problem. Getting another good result under the belts. They've beaten, what was it, the last 7 All-Ireland winners all told. They've beaten in their first 2 games of the league. And I think maybe just when they get kind of a very kind of a dirty day against tough opposition over the next couple of weeks, that's when it'll be another maybe test of character, when it's not maybe as open of a game maybe as it was against Dublin, and they don't get to express themselves physically maybe as well as they did yesterday. But they're definitely doing everything right at the moment. How have we gotten, tell me this though, how have we gotten 7 minutes into the show without talking about Dublin and Kerry?
The biggest story of the weekend, and I tweeted about it, it's Billy Lee's job he's doing in Limerick. I'll tell you, that's some story. That's something that needs to be talked about as well. No, listen, Dublin and Kerry was, look, it was actually hard disbelieving to see how poor Dublin were in that first half, and particularly lads, and listen, I know it's not the same team, and it's been sort of people are saying, oh, it's not the same team. Lads, the core of the group is still there. Kieran Kilkenny, Brian Fenton, Scully. Like, there's a lot of those lads are there under Jim Gavin's time. They just look a completely lost outfit at the minute. They don't seem to be as process driven as they were under Gavin. And I said this, lads, a couple of years ago. I think one of Jim's biggest attributes, or one of his biggest achievements, was just keeping a lid on the Dublin bubble. Keeping the hype down. Just controlling the egos. There was nobody talking in a shop. There was no discontent. Everything just seemed to be, and that's a very, very difficult job to do when you're in that bubble of Dublin, because they're superstars. They are superstars. They're different from every other county in that even their sponsorship deals with AIG, they are Premiership footballers of the equivalent of our sport, and I just think Jim done a remarkable job, lads, in keeping that all sort of glued together and really controlled and tight, and listen, Shane, we talked about it actually as we're travelling down to Galway on Saturday, myself and a friend of mine, and he was showing me the link to your show last year where I sort of mentioned that there were, and we got a bit of criticism for it, that I could see their squad getting weaker, the strength and depth wasn't there, and people were laughing and saying, but it's very evident when you lose players of the calibre they've lost, it's very hard to replace. But Michael, one thing that shocked me on Saturday night was the lack of game management. Like even when the goal went in, like when Kerry's goal went in, there's somebody put a great tweet up. They had a camera from behind the goal. It's a great footage of the goal. And just after the goal, look at the Dublin body language. That has never been seen. Heads down, slumping, walking out. Like Dublin always prided themselves on zero emotion, very sterile, whether they were in victory or defeat. And it just looked like a group that just are not happy, man. It just looked like a group that are definitely not happy. And I tell you, it's going to be a long road back, boys, because you can talk about, it's only game 2, etc., etc. There's glaring issues there, and it's going to take an awful lot of fixing for me.
Michael, I throw this at you. Like, Desi Farrell is in a situation now where he's trying to stay calm when everything is probably just going awry around him. It's the first time since, is it 2009, that they've lost 3 competitive games in a row. And he was saying, look, everyone has an opinion. There'll be those who want to twist the knife, of course, and that's just part and parcel of Dublin's legacy. It's about the internal focus. Those players need plenty of love and care and nurturing, and people who understand where Dublin are at, and people who understand are at, anyway. You just need to give young players time. What about this idea of trying to keep calm under pressure and maybe just keep the thing, keep treading water until the likes of James McCarthy and Con O'Callaghan? And I thought it was interesting that he named these players when they obviously weren't going to be available to play. I think that seemed to wind a few people up that they did that.
Yeah, it was just a bit bizarre. It kind of, I don't know, to me it smacked of desperation a small bit maybe, and trying to get some sort of psychological advantage. I don't know, or to try and keep the public on side somewhat. But I definitely, there was just so many things the other night. They were in the game, I think they were 6-4 down, and the game just completely went away from them. It was 1-8 to no score. And as Stevie said there was no game management. There was no one slowing the thing down. There was no one, as you said last week, putting the hand up, making a call that they need to hold on to the ball here for a couple of minutes. I was just amazed. There was a couple of things. Brian Howard kicked a free, I think it's about 50 or 60 yards out, just lobbed a free in about 20 yards in front to a man who was actually not facing the ball. It's just such an un-Dublin-like kind of pass to do. Brian Fenton did the same in the second half. Even when they were going forward, there was no pace to the runs. There was no angles to the run. A lot of the time, they're actually just passing to a guy that was backwards. None of it was off the shoulder that we'd, associate with Dublin. And even for Larkin O'Dell's goal chance going through, even at worst case scenario, he would have given Rock the chance to do the volleyball finish. And it was that, it was that far off that it was, way too far ahead of him. And the fact that there was, like, having not learned from the Armagh game, that there was no one parked around the D, patrolling the house, looking after the best forward in the country, trying to negate the space and the ball going into him. I just couldn't believe it, to be honest with you. And it seems to me to strike at something a lot deeper than Dublin just been missing a couple of players, something a lot deeper within the squad, and potentially I don't know if there's any issues within the squad or not. I'm kind of hearing various murmurs or not, but it definitely looks it's not the sort of thing you can just write off and put a line through. This looks like it's becoming a pattern now.
Stephen, two questions there. Number one, have you been in a position like Desi before where you're having these poor results and you're trying to keep calm because you feel like maybe we'll get all our players back and things can come right? And then the other point is, do you look at Dublin's setup at the moment and think there's very clear, obvious things they can do to sort of ensure that they perform a little bit better? Like Michael talked about blocking up the D, for example. Is there anything you're seeing?
Shane, listen, it happens all the time. We're coaches, and people have this sort of misperception that coaching, it's all glory and success and stuff. Like you've a lot more difficult days than you have good days, and that's coaching, that's life, and it's how you respond. And sometimes when your back's to the wall, you have to come out fighting. And for me, it's always been a simple case, Shane, like of right, let's what are we doing wrong? What can we improve? And start with the basics, as Michael talked about. Start with your defensive structure, and look at defensively. They conceded a goal against Armagh with 70 yards of space and left the defender one-on-one. I'm not sure who it was. I think it was maybe Lee Gannon or something was marking like one-on-one the other night. To leave, forwards of the caliber that Kerry have with so much space is it's just tactically naive. Like, and that's for me is the starting point, Shane, for them. Go back to basics. Go back to what they were really, really good at. They got a lot of men behind the ball. They were very difficult to break down. And then when they had the ball, you never got it back because they were masters at keeping the ball and managing the game and wearing you down and making things happen. And they also mixed that with the attractive football. And let's get one thing straight here, lads, as well, right? This was the best Gaelic football team, the best coached Gaelic football team we have ever seen. They were phenomenal. And you have to hold your hands up and say they were phenomenal. And I've said this for a long time now. It was never going to last forever. And we have to accept that. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing. And like Kilkenny and their dominance, and Shane, you're, big hurling fan yourself. Like, you knew Kilkenny, they were just phenomenal. But it was never going to last forever. Cross McLean was never going to last forever. These are teams that come along. And there was a bit of a joke made about, I think, one of the Sunday games or something about the generation, it was a once in a generation group of players. You actually look back now, they were probably right. That these lads like Flynn and Brogan and Conley and McCaffrey and all these lads coming through at the one time, they were a phenomenal group of players. Like, and those lads just haven't been replaced with the same level of player that they were, and that's just life. It's just football. And for me, if Dublin are going out next week, who are they playing next week? Who have they got in 2 weeks?
Is it Mayo?
A great chance to stick the
knife in. I watched them yesterday, and I think they're just mad. They are just mad. Like and like it's a game. It's not a good game to begin with because Mayo will just bring that savage level of intensity. The mayhem that they bring to their games it's so enjoyable to watch. But for me, Dublin now in a couple of weeks really, really have to get back to basics, get back to what they were doing really well, Shane. They were really good at when they lost the ball. They always had the +1 on cover on. They always were well organised defensively. At the minute, they just look a mess. They just look an absolute mess, and I think that's the starting block for them. That is definitely the starting block for them moving forward.
So the game finished 1-15, Kerry 11 points to Dublin. Kerry managed just a point in the second half. And I know there was like a gale and all that, as there was in most games in both codes all weekend. But Stephen, Kerry scored just a point in the second half. And this was like a week on from the Kildare game where they scored just 2 points, I think, from maybe the 40th minute on as well. So this is now becoming a theme a little bit. But Jack O'Connor said afterwards, he said, we were determined after last weekend we were going to move the ball quicker and get it in more direct to the forwards. For some reason, halfway through the second half, above in Newbridge, we stopped moving the ball and went lateral. that is not our player how we like to play. Much happier tonight, considering the conditions. I think 114 was a great score in the first half. What are your thoughts about how they played and the fact that in the second halves of the two games now, things seem to have dried up?
Yeah, well, look, I think conditions had a big part to play in it, Shane, to be fair now. There was a very, very strong breeze in Tralee, and it was a very strong breeze over the whole weekend. There was a strong breeze in Clonus yesterday as well, although both teams, for me, probably played better against the breeze. But I think Donegal were very similar at the weekend as well. They had, I think, 2-8 or 2-9 on the board at half time, or maybe 2-6, 2-7, and finished with 2-11, 3 or 4 points in the second half. So, it was the weekend. It's very hard to judge, Shane. I think Newbridge was the same last week. There was a strong breeze right down the field. So, yeah, 1.5 points of football is obviously not ideal. It's not good. They had chances. They did miss chances. They missed a couple of free kicks as well. And on another night, they might have ended up with 5 or 6 scores on the board for the second half. But listen, 115 still a decent return in those conditions, and especially against Dublin as well. And listen, you're looking at it and you're thinking to yourself, there's probably not an enormous amount wrong with Kerry, Shane. They possess some of the best forwards in the country, and it's something that actually was very evident in Monaghan's play as well against the Breeze was their willingness to kick the ball and kick it early, and they did that quite a bit against Mayo, which was interesting to see, because the ball will move faster than any man, as you know, and I know that that's something that James is obviously trying to get down players to do at the minute as well. He's a big fan of, if you can kick it early, then obviously it doesn't let the opposition set up, so, and Kerry's DNA, it's in their DNA, it's always been in their DNA to kick the ball. They love kicking the ball. They're all good footballers. They're all very competent footballers. So, Paddy's obviously in there. Paddy Tally's in there. Paddy's maybe brought in, to address a particular issue or a particular theme, in their game. But for me, it is early yet to be sort of maybe saying that they're contenders, etc. So I just still feel that if they meet a team that are really well organised and really well structured, they may struggle. They may struggle defensively, because I do feel that they do have some feelings defensively at the present moment in time. And maybe as the season progresses, you'll see Paddy Tally's influence from a defensive point of view, creeping into their game. And I suppose, what did they concede against Kildare? I think it was only 11 scores, and then 11 the other night against Dublin. So, defensively it's been sound, it's been solid so far. So time will tell.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. And as well, I think Dublin can say, look at the black card situation that prevented them getting that goal. Dean Rock put the ball into the area, hit the post off the goalkeeper and into the net. And it was a mistaken man. Sean McMahon is the one who should have got the black card, because Niall Scully was probably 30 yards away from the incident. So what can go wrong kind of did go wrong. Like you mentioned, Mayo and Monaghan there, finished Mayo 2-10, Monaghan 1-11. Paddy Durkin had a 76-minute goal line clearance there. Monaghan kicked 10 wides, dropped 5 more short. Jack McCarran hit the post with a close range free. Like, you were very impressed, Stephen, with some of the kickouts, the bravery of the kickouts of Rory Began in that weather, because you sent me a clip. Like, I mean, it's incredible what some of these lads are doing.
It's just on a different level, Shane. Like we were chatting about it yesterday, and we were saying, like, it's even just the composure of him, the calmness of him. There's no, like, he doesn't sprint and get his tee, and he's not all flustered looking to kick the ball, and he just literally comes out with the ball, throws it down. There's no tee. He's happy just to chip it left, chip it right, ping it left, ping it right, go long. He's got every armour in his locker. It's a joy to watch, Shane, and he's actually become, Shane, a huge playmaker for them as well, coming out the field, blocking space when the opposition are attacking, also taking a lot of free kicks in his own half, which is providing them then with an outlet. And I just thought he was absolutely tremendous yesterday. Really, really, really good. Really on top of his game, a player who's on top of his game. The one just surprising aspect of it was, I was just surprised that Monaghan never let him hit the free kicks in the first half, because it was ideal for him to actually hit the ball with a flat trajectory into the wind, so I was surprised that they never allowed him to do that now,
Yeah, so, and the same the week before that, he didn't take on that winning free attempt against Tyrone, or maybe it was there. But Owen McLaughlin is injured now. God knows what the situation is going to be with his ankle, and this is only a week after Tommy Conroy is out for the season with an ACL. But just to talk about Armagh and Tyrone, a crowd of 14,328 went to see that game at the Athletics ground. 2-14 to 14 points for a finish. Like, there was 5 red cards, but the thing that really stood out to me, Stephen, was the fact that Armagh easily could have had 5 goals in this game, and Tyrone looked a little bit all over the place.
The game could have been, well, it was probably out of sight, Shane, at half time, to be fair. Let's be honest. Like, Tyrone had probably had too much to do. But no, Armagh are in the right trajectory. We've talked about it earlier in the show. They're definitely in the right trajectory. The game was overshadowed a wee bit, I suppose, with the 5 red cards, bit of a talking point, and I've said it before as well. Like, I think the umpires had a big influence in it, and it just sort of begs the question: do we need 4 umpires? Do we need 8 officials? We're the only sport in the world that has 8 officials, I think, and there's 4 qualified officials there: a linesman, 4th official, both sides? Do we need umpires in there as well, who tend to be friends and family of referees? So, listen, look, I don't think it's a big issue or a big talking point, but it's always been a sort of a bugbear of mine that, people doing umpires, particularly even club games, very controversial. Like there's one, I think it was Davy Fitz actually was involved in a game, and he was a manager of another club, and the same thing happened here in Down a few years ago. We had an umpire who actually sent off 3 players after the final whistle, or got 3 players sent off after the final whistle. We were playing them 2 weeks later in a league game. He was the manager of the team. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you're thinking to yourself, how is this possible? So I've always had a little bit of a sort of a bugbear with umpires, and do we really need them? And I think he was the one that was giving the names to Goff at the end, and Goff was firing out red cards. But then someone made a good point. Like, if Goff had been refereeing in Killarney or in Tralee the night before, you mightn't have anybody left in the field, to carry on that was going on. Even when who do you call him, Clifford missed the penalty and Scully ran 30 yards, squealing his face. Like, if that was an Ulster, like, there'd nearly be a whole show dedicated to it in the Sunday game. So you just need to be sort of careful in what way we're refereeing the game, and let it go. And like players and supporters, like even in Monaghan yesterday, Sean Herson was blowing a lot of technical fouls because that's the way Sean referees, and I think Sean's a great referee. I think he's a really good referee. But like, he's blowing such small little technical fouls, like, and he's obviously maybe getting a tick for that or whatever from the assessor, and like the supporters, the frustration in the players and the supporters, like, they just want the game to flow as much as possible, and it can be frustrating, like, because I don't know if you disagree, but I didn't see anything in that melee at all. Like, didn't see anybody striking. I didn't see anybody being overly zealous or aggressive. There's a bit of pulling and shoving and whose arms are bigger than my arms are bigger than yours sort of game. Like, but it wasn't really like it wasn't anything really untoward that you wouldn't see, in a game up and down the country every day of the week,
Yeah, I mean, I think the Dublin versus Waterford melee was, I saw more strokes pulled in that than I did in the Armagh Tyrone one. I think even that camera, the one from the spectator there, the up close one at the end of the field, that's like, it's unsightly or whatever, but it is very hard to pick out one incident. I do think there's an awful lot of headlocks going on, and this is something that I saw in the Dublin Waterford game. They're potentially a bit dangerous. So Greg McCabe was the only Armagh man sent off. 4 for Tyrone and Pádraig Hampsey, Kieran McGeary, Michael McKernan and Peter Hart. Fergal Logan said, let's just hope we can get a good look at the video and things will potentially balance themselves out again. It didn't seem that one-sided or out to me, but anyway, all we can do for the moment is live with it as best we can. And Kieran McGeaney said, I'm sure everybody's going to be looking at videos tonight and there's going to be solicitors all over the place. Michael, do you think, it's a question that's been put to us here by Garrod Howley, are Armagh peaking too early though? Will they keep this form? I mean, they're after beating team number 1 and 2, I suppose.
Yeah, we don't know. We know that their conditioning levels are obviously extremely good at the moment. We don't know whether they're ahead of other teams or not. Or we don't. I'm sure their plan, like every manager or coach's plan, is to peak. I'd imagine their plan is to peak for Ulster Championship and get a couple of Ulster Championship wins and go on a run in the Championship. So I don't know if you can say they're peaking too early. They're up in Division 1 as well. Like, they don't. One of their key goals, I'd say, for this year was to stay in Division 1 and maintain that. So you do. There's kind of a periodization thing where they need to peak in the league to maintain Division 1, and they also maybe need to break and then peak again for the Ulster Championship. So I don't know if they're peaking too soon. Just as regards all those sendings off, I think managers and players, I'm not saying they've been coached in this aspect, but I'd say it's a conversation that has been said a bit. Like, if you strike, you're sent off. It's black and white. Usually, lads maybe drag someone to the ground or something like that. It's not usually seen as a red card. Like, I've been told, managers have often said to me in various teams that we've been in, just drag him to the ground, the two of you'll get yellow or whatever, if that's the way. But it looked like David Goff was handing out reds yesterday for them. The big thing is this going to be a precedent set by that, or will they all be overturned? If it's a precedent set and we're trying to get some of that kind of nastiness somewhat out of our game, that's fair enough. But if they're all appealed, and Fergal Logan has a very good record of appealing and knows that system inside out, if they're appealed and overturned, well, then it's kind of farcical in many ways. So I think that's the most fascinating thing of it all for me over the next couple of weeks, because Tyrone will not want to be without their footballer of the year, their captain, their probably the best cornerback, and Peter Hart. They're not going to want to be without them. They're two defeats already. They're definitely not going to want to be without 4 of their best. So they will throw everything at the appeals process, and it's going to be fascinating to see whether they are all overturned or not. I just think it's fascinating. The camera that from the back of the goal, it it literally looks like the players are on top of the people, and that maybe makes it kind of, there's nothing bad happening in it. It's very close to the sidelines, very close to people. It's very close to concrete. It's very close to, incidents where people could get hurt. But I didn't actually think it was too bad. But David Goff has taken a stance on it. It would be interesting to see whether his stance is backed by the higher powers.
Stephen, I know you've only got another couple of minutes before you have to go, but 2 questions in one, if you could. Do you think Armagh are we getting to that stage where you have to start saying, wow, this team is really rolling here and could be a contender in the summer? Or is it just league, Dublin and Tyrone, they'll be right come summer? And then the other question, I was kind of saying last week, I thought that Michael Murphy should be wrapped up in cotton wool until the summer. And here he is now after getting an ankle injury. They're not entirely sure how he's going to be for the summer. But, again, I just don't understand putting him out there in the winter. Just keep him right until summer.
Well, Shane, it's like anything. It's like winning, losing becomes a habit, winning becomes a habit. You get into that winning habit early. You build a bit of consistency, you build a bit of momentum. Michael talked about Division 1. Armagh have now stayed in Division 1 2 consecutive years. Well, they should this year, as well. So they stayed in Division 1 last year, which was huge. They'll probably stay in Division 1 again this year, if not contest the top end of the table. For a group and for a squad to develop and progress, I don't think, and you could shoot me down with this, but I think there was a stat emerged a few years ago that no team had ever won the Sam Maguire from Division 2. Is that right? I don't know if that's true or not, but it could be something along those lines, or it's been a hell of a long time since. So to compete for Sam and to compete for Ulsters, they probably do need to be playing in Division 1, because playing Division 2, and particularly Division 3 with the war when McGinney got them, is not ideal for progress and development. And when you're playing better sides, you become a better player. The coaches improve, everybody improves, because you're coming up against the best. And the one thing, Michael, I would say about them peaking too soon or going too early, this is a unique year in that the league is just going to literally run into the championship. There's not going to be a 3-month break as such. Like, I think Down play Monaghan on the 30th of April. They play their last league game, I think, 3 weeks before that or 4 weeks before that. So you're really going to have a very, very small window. There might be a week of tapering off after the league, recharge the batteries and then go again. But you're coming straight into the championship, bang. So I actually think it's a very good year to start off really, really quickly. Probably unique in that you're not waiting from, like it used to be when you played at the end of March, you had to wait maybe to the end of May or start of June or maybe the middle of June. Like I remember a championship game, maybe I think the last week of June. Like that's, what was that, 10 weeks or something between league and championship? Well, you don't have that this year, Shane. It's only a 3-week break. So it could be the year for someone to come through with a bit of momentum and a bit of energy coming through the league who's going to really, really go well. And listen, with Dublin's demise and with probably, just for talk's sake, Kerry's defensive vulnerabilities, Mayo injury list is building again. I watched them yesterday. They'll always bring the madness. Like the likes of Monaghan now are going to be looking in thinking we could win this All Ireland. Tyrone just not motoring the way they were. It's going to be very hard for Tyrone to lift it again this year and go back to back. Let's be honest. Like it's going to be very, very hard for them. So you're looking at Division 1 and you're thinking to yourself, there's maybe 4 or 5 teams here could actually win the All Ireland that we've never spoken about before, Shane, Michael. Like you're looking at the likes of your Monaghans, you're looking at, and like, listen, I can tell you this now, Armagh, why could they not win it? And that's not me getting carried away. Like they're really, really well organised. Like they're playing probably, and this is the funny thing, like they're playing so defensively organised, but they're breaking with a lot of pace, a lot of athleticism, and that's what's making their football attractive. They're still getting bodies behind the ball. They play the athletic grounds very, very well as well. I think they have a great record there. I think they've only had a handful of defeats there in the last 5 or 6 years, but they will be knocking on the door. So all of a sudden now you've got contenders coming through. Galway, where they're good enough or not remains to be seen, but they'll fancy their chances too. That if they beat Mayo in the Connacht semi-final, they'll fancy a chance of winning Connacht, and then they're only one game away from an All-Ireland final. And that's the beauty of the knockout as well, which sort of makes the championship very interesting this year because it is wide open.
Yeah, if you do have that final moment on Michael Murphy, I mean, last year he wasn't 100% right when he played against Tyrone, missed the penalty, got sent off. I'm not putting it all on him, of course, but him picking up another injury here, and I think Declan Bonnar said afterwards there seems to be some damage done. So maybe it was ankle, maybe it was leg, but could this potentially be a terminal blow if he's not right for championship?
Listen, he's huge. He's huge, Shane. He's their leader, their talisman. He drives the whole thing. Even from a physical perspective, I think psychologically for the players as well. Like, and even his ability to hit free kicks, from long distance, it's a huge weapon for any team to have. It just, you're going through a period of pressure and you get a free kick 55, 60 meters from goal, and and you know that that's going to be stroked over, like that is some advantage, even to get a press on the opposition's kick out. And so there's a whole range of things there what Michael brings to the table, not just from his playing ability, and he is like possibly one of the best players in the country, and has been for the last 10 years. So mammoth blow for them if he is out. But as you say, they've got 3 points on the board. I think they drew the first game, they beat Kildare. They'll do enough to stay in Division 1, I'm sure. So why not prioritise an Ulster Championship? But that's going to be an intriguing battle, Armagh and Donegal and Ulster. It's going to be a really intriguing game. It'll be tactical warfare, and as good as Armagh are going, and as well as they're going, and they could end up top of the league, they could easily lose the first round of the Ulster Championship. That's the minefield that Ulster is, That's the minefield that it is, and that's the attritional affairs that you're going to be up against. And that's why it's for me, whoever comes out of Ulster in this format, in this All Ireland, which is literally like, come out of Ulster and you have 2 games. I think whoever comes out of Ulster is going to be probably physically and mentally more primed to win a Sam Maguire than the other provinces, because like Kerry's not really going to be challenged. Connacht is competitive between 3 on their day. Dublin, but in Ulster you could have 4 or 5 really, really good games that leave you razor sharp heading into an All Ireland semi-final.
You have us absolutely primed for summer already. We're only 2 games into the league, Stephen. Brilliant. Thanks very much for joining us, and as ever, appreciate your analysis and insights.
Thanks, Steve.
So great to have Stephen there. Always good to have him on the show. Are you starting to think now, this, like we talked about last week, this is the most open All-Ireland Championship we've headed into in at least a decade?
No, without a doubt, yeah. And I do think the opportunity knocks for an Armagh, for a Monaghan, particularly, as you said, they're going to be really battle-hardened coming into the All-Ireland stages, if they can get there. And
doesn't this have Cork Clare 2013 feel to it? Remember, Dublin were in the semi-final, Limerick were. All of a sudden we had 4 teams, and you were like, any one of these could win it, and none of them have done it in any recent period of time.
Yeah, it does have that bit of a feel to it. Obviously Kilkenny were in kind of a transition period in 13. Like Dublin look to be in now. Kerry still have question marks about them, probably as Tipperary did then. It's just it's a really, really interesting time. I just couldn't believe, even with the Dubs the other night, just like, launch an aimless long ball into the edge of the square. It just made very little sense. And the second it happened, you're just thinking, this is not Dublin taking on shots that are outside of that, high percentage area. Just a lot of very, very strange happenings. Just gives you an inkling that things that all maybe not right. And I did say to you before that you can have a legacy from a really good manager or a coach been involved in a setup. Like I'm starting to wonder now, the legacy of Jim Gavin's reign, did that carry on into 2020? And Dublin were able to win another All-Ireland. And then all of a sudden the wheels are starting to come off a bit now. When you've had such a good setup and it almost runs itself, that can carry on for a period of time once the manager leaves. But then eventually it does kind of catch up, and there's a new setup, new regime, new players. It definitely looks like that in Dublin now. And geez, I think Mayo will be coming for blood in Croke Park in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that game. And do you know what? Dessie Farrell is an All-Ireland winner manager, but what a job he has in his hands here. Do you know what? I definitely want to look at the All-Ireland winning speech of Neil Forrester for Steelestown and Brian Oakes. They beat Trim 3-14 to 2-5. I'm just going to bring it up on screen here and play it, because
I haven't heard this yet, and I've heard it's brilliant.
Yeah. I'm just going to bring it up on screen here. We'll play it. Orla Mullen, she shared it online. So let's play it through and talk on the back of it.
We're a young club. We were founded by Anthony McGurk, Mickey Doherty, Philip Devlin. They were told there was no Gaelic football in the city, but they did not listen. They planted the acorn. It was nurtured by people like Breed, Kelly McElroy, Andy Barr Sr. They were told there was no Gaelic football in Derry City. They did not listen. To you, our coaches, administrators, parents, you nurtured us more. The oak tree grew. Gaelic football is alive in Derry City. It hasn't been easy. We faced serious adversity off the pitch. We've never won a league or a championship on our men's team. Now we have 3. Finally, Adversity wasn't just on the pitch, it was off it. We lost people that we loved. People like Charlene, people like Brian Oak McKeever. He's the true captain of this club. It should be him climbing these steps. He's the captain's captain. It wasn't to be. So instead, we named our club after him, even though he was only 17 years old. That's the type of man that he was. And tonight, everybody will know his name and our club's name, because Dublin City belongs to Stateside Brian Oakes.
I have to say, what a speech that was. I mean, even the look on his face, that'll get you going.
I hadn't listened to that until there now. I goosebumps after about 5 seconds. It was like, it was almost like a wrestler cutting a promo. It was that good. That was so good, and it just tugged at the heartstrings, and that was just top class. I just loved everything about it, and even his authority up there, and you could just see some of the players down on the pitch and just pointing back up at him, and especially when he mentioned Brian Oak. It's an amazing achievement for a club like to go and win Derry, Ulster, and an All-Ireland title all in 1 year, having not been able to get over the line. This was this Derry intermediate final was their 4th final since 2010. They hadn't gone over the line until this year. It's amazing, amazing. And that was a dominant performance as well. Dominant against a very good trim side.
Yeah, absolutely. Kilmena won the junior football final, 11 points to Guineagilla's 1-6 after extra time. Jack Carney was man of the match. They're the first Mayo team to be crowned All-Ireland junior football champions. In the ladies' side of things, the All-Ireland Junior Club final, St. Jude's beat Mullinahone 3-9 to 1-8. Caoimhe McGrath, Aoife Keys and Aisling Gannon scored the goals. We'll blitz through a couple of the other results in the football. We've already talked about Galway beating Down 112 to 9 points. Paul Conroy with 1-2. Cork drew with Clare. That was 113 apiece. So that was an important point for Cork. And a couple of comments in here about Clare, actually. Adrian McGrath says Clare have 3 points with 2 home games to come. Jamie Malone and Podge coming off the bench, plus 4 lads from the UL Sigerson team as well. That squad are clear promotion contenders.
They are, and they're always downplayed. But they're always going to be there, and they're always consistent.
Yeah, and Gerard Howley adds, Adrian, Clareman, myself, a point is better than nothing, but we should have beaten Cork. Somehow that free landed in the net. That draw could come back to bite us, but hopefully not. Gerard Howley adds, Owen McLaughlin went off in a stretcher yesterday. Huge loss for UL and Mayo. We definitely have mentioned that. And let's see, big shout out to the Tulla. Great win for a small school. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Sigerson should be on before Christmas. Could be shown at TG Cahir. The best from around the country playing together. Thursday should be good. Do you know, I mean, I do think that the clashes where you have county managers against club managers, in some situations, and against college managers, it's all just a big mess at the moment. And I think a lot of these injuries we're seeing at the moment are legacies of players just being out with too many teams. And I even see a close hand with some of the teams here locally in Dublin. There are just injuries cropping up all the time. And do you know what? Some of the challenge for a county club and college managers is, in a given week, they could be fighting with one of those other managers for a player. The poor old players in the middle. You could have injuries because of overtraining. You could even have COVID into the mix as well, because obviously that's ruling players out still. So it's just a very difficult time, and I think something from the top down needs to be done in terms of like ensuring that county managers cannot call on college players or club players while their competitions are still alive. Now, if that means moving Sigerson back before Christmas, I don't see that happening. But there's enough players in a county to still be able to put out a team without having to basically call too much or try to get players to play too many games.
I agree and I disagree. The players are the ones that are going to lose out. That's the nature of it. Sigerson is obviously the biggest. Sigerson and Fitzgibbon are the biggest third level competitions. Their respective managers are going to want those players 100%. For a lot of counties playing in the league, that is essentially their championship. That is, they are going gung-ho. Like Billy O'Loughlin said in Longford, like the league is all that matters to him. That's all that matters. Playing teams of a similar standard. So if he has guys, which he has, Joseph Egan is playing with DCU, like they have guys that are playing Sigerson. it's such a difficult balancing act. That's why you just need to, like, they want to win. They want them to develop and play Sigerson Cup with DCU or whoever it is, and they want to win league games because their head is on the chopping block. So I just think you need to take it out of the county managers. You need to take it out of the equation, really. Put it on at a different time. Put it on at a time when there are no, meaningful inter-county fixtures going on, and then I think it's just the option is there, and once the option is always there, players are always going to be asked to play Sunday, to play Wednesday, to play Sunday, to play Wednesday, and then eventually some players will break down. The only way you get away with it is if you're, a really elite county who has really big numbers and knows that your place in Division 1 or your place in Division 2 or whatever it is safe, and you can afford those players the luxury, like John Kiley can probably do with Keane Lynch and a couple more if it's given, because he knows, their place in Division 1 is safe. They'll probably still win 3 or 4 games and get into knockout stages, even if they don't have one of their best players.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we could debate that all day. I might just, if you want to run through the Division 3 there, and I'll run through Division 4. Actually, the end of Division 2, and Division 3, and I'll go through 4.
Yeah, Roscommon beat Meath 115 to 111. So I think Meath didn't score their first point from play until the 47th minute. And Andy McEntee was sent to the stands near the end. I think his son James was sent to the stand as well. Like, that's just a more kind of worrying times for Meath from a Roscommon point of view. Great result without, the Pierces and saying Fahlocks, I'm going to call them anyway. They're contingent Folias. They're missing. There's about a silent T, a silent H, there's a silent everything in that. But they're missing about a good half dozen players from between those two clubs. So another good result for Roscommon after beating Cork the first week. Derry just much too strong for Offaly, 2-13 to 7 points. Shane McGuigan very good again. Offaly going to struggle in Division 2. Derry definitely going to be up that top end. Looking like Derry, Roscommon, Galway, Clare in around that promotion Ricks. In Division 3 then, Limerick again, and Stevie said it there, we all talk about the green wave in Limerick hurling, but I know Paul Kinnerk is, a big player behind the scenes in the underage development in Limerick football. But what Billy Lee is doing with the seniors at the moment is, they were a mid-table Division 4 side. Now they're, 2 from 2 in Division 3 and pushing for promotion. They beat Antrim 2-9 to 11 points. A couple early goals was the key there in the wind-up. Westmeath beat Laois in the Midlands Derby 2-11 to 11 points. So that's 2 from 2 for Jack Cooney. Sam Mulroy kicked a last-minute free, I think, or a last-minute score to snatch a draw. Longford 9 points, Louth 1-6. I doubt that was an award-winning game now. It sounds fairly attritional. Wicklow 1-10 for Mana 2-7. That's a good result for Wicklow, having been very competitive with Westmeath the week before. Oisin McGrainer hit the leveller in the wind-up there, and I think they'd be happy to get a point from their 2 games. It's the least they deserve.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk a bit of hurling now.
Division 4, Shane. Don't forget Division 4.
Sorry, apologies. London 112, Waterford 2-8. So that's a 1-point win for Michael Maher and his team there. And, we even said it last week, having not played competitively in 23 months, they're flying it there with 2 from 2. Sligo with a 28 points to 5 win over Carlow. Now, that is the mother and father of beatings there. Colm Hulton was the only scorer from Carlow. Niall Murphy, he scored 9. Sean Carabine scored 3. So did Luke Towie. Pat Spillane Jr. scored a couple of points there.
Can you believe that? Like, that must have taken you aback. 28 points. I cannot remember the last time a football team has kicked 28 points in a competitive game. Like, just 28, not like 329 or something like that. 28 points. It's a phenomenal score.
You'd be thinking, was this game on in the Dome or something?
That was exactly my first opinion, yeah.
But it was Markowitz Park, so it actually wasn't even. So that's an incredible scoreline to put up. I didn't actually believe it at first. I double-checked it. Cavan beat Wexford 17 points to 1-8. Road McKernan with 5 points. And Tipperary, very disappointing results at Semple Stadium from my point of view. 2-16 Leitrim, Tipperary 2-8. So that's Andy Moran's first win as Leitrim manager, which is a huge boost to him. Okay, we're going to talk a bit of hurling now, but just a reminder, we're brought to you by OurGaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame. You get 15% off any of the cool jerseys that you'll see on screen. They have a great selection on the website. And obviously, these ones we're modelling just here. They're small bits snug around the gut region, but not too bad. Still just about held to
they're only snug around the gut if you have a gut.
Girdle, don't let me down right now. Also, as many of our viewers will know at this stage, all the Thursday shows are now behind Patreon. It's just $5 a month, and it works out about 50 cents over the course of the year per show. The real issue is not that people don't think the show is worth 50 cents. It's just taking the 2 minutes to sign up And that's it. We'll be live. I'll be sharing the link on Wednesday and Thursday for Thursday's show. So
some great stuff as well, Shane, after games and things like that. There's so much extra content there as well for Patreon customers. They obviously get it first, and it'll pop up on their phone straight away. And if they've missed the game, they'll be able to get the action straight after. And it's a great service for a fiver. Like, sure, a fiver is nothing. And all I'd say is, with regards to the hardship of signing up, it takes about 90 seconds, and you all have the stuff to do it, and you need to go out and do it.
Absolutely. I did a match report from Laois against Tipperary the other day as well. And
I can't wait I can't wait to get stuck into that now.
Oh, I don't want to talk about that at all. I know, to be honest, like, there was upsides to it too. But look, we'll get to that game in a little bit of time. But first off, Wexford beat Limerick. And, after last week, I was a little bit down and out about what was going to happen with Wexford because they were down so many players. Lee Chin wasn't around. Rory O'Connor wasn't around. Kevin Foley had gone off injured. So that's your vice captain and captain who are out. Shane Reck wasn't around. Sean Murphy also. They were down an awful lot of players, but they still beat Limerick 111-11. I mean, that tells you straight away by the scoreline. I mean, sure, look, didn't Sligo score more in football than these two teams put together? But to beat Limerick like that in what was a fairly attritional game, low-scoring game, horrendous, windy sort of day, I mean, that's some going no matter how it comes.
Savage result. Like, they were beaten, 16 points the week before by Dublin in a Walsh Cup final, absolutely blown away. And you were like, I didn't give them a hope. I'm not going to lie. Didn't give them a chance, to be honest with you. I didn't think they had a hope going into this game. And I'm just thinking now, from their point of view and from Darragh Egan's point of view, there's probably that same momentum as Davy had when he came in 2017, when they incidentally beat Limerick as well, one of John Kiley's first games in the league. And I think they went down to go down to Galway and beat Galway as well. There's a lot of momentum there, and there's a lot of belief from a lot of young players like Charlie McGuckie and these guys, some guys like that hadn't played before. Obviously, Gavin Bailey had played a bit last year, Conan Flood had played a bit last year, but those guys will be absolutely walking tall this morning, and it will definitely give them the confidence. Like, Darragh Egan has made no bones about the fact that he keeps saying we need to blood new players, we need to develop more players. And it's what you always think that's a process, and I'm sure it will turn out to be a process that will have some pain along the way. But to get this big of a high straight away and to beat the best, even if they were missing, a couple of key players, they still had, I think, 7 reigning All-Stars from 2021 starting yesterday. It was a massive, massive win for them, a huge win, especially when Limerick went 11-9 up, it looked like the game was going to go away from Wexford, and then they hit 1-2 without reply. It's just a huge result, massive, massive result.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just go through the scores here. For Wexford, Jack O'Connor, he scored 5, 4 of those were free. Mikey Dwyer scored a goal. Oisin Foley, Conal Flood got a couple each. Dermot O'Keefe and Conor MacDonald, they got a point. For Limerick, Dermot Burns scored 3 points, all place balls. Grode Hegarty scored 3. Aaron Gallant scored a couple of frees. Declan Hannon, David Reedy and Robbie Hanley scored a point each. So you can see there straight off the bat, you score 11 points. 5 of them are from, actually 6, including David Reedy's. So 6 of your 11 points are from frees. I know the conditions are rotten, and obviously Wexford are a bit more used to it down there. But that's a poor return because it kind of speaks to maybe, once you go too far into a panel in terms of depth, maybe it isn't quite as all-powerful as we had said about Limerick in the past. They are very dominant. When they have Cian Lynch in the team and a couple of more of the big players that weren't available yesterday, when they have them in there, they're still going to be massive All-Ireland favourites and everyone else a mile after them. But I think that they did look very, very blunt up front. I think Colin O'Neill gave away a couple of balls with stick passes that were a bit awry. He clearly has the talent, but it might take a little bit longer. I think Pat Ryan and David Reedy had quiet enough days. Robbie Hanley was quiet in midfield. Declan Hannon, I thought, did some great stuff there at centre-back. But it was hard to be blown away by the depth, even while we do keep the longer-term view that Limerick are sensational dominant team.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of guys who are used to coming in maybe with 10 or 15 minutes to go. Maybe the likes of David Reedy, Pat Ryan, maybe, they're more associated with being finishers maybe. They got their start yesterday, and you have to say a good few lads probably fluffed their lines and are going to go a bit down the pecking order again. That's definitely what, you don't get that many chances. Lynch is going to be back once the Fitzgibbon is over. Sean Finn is going to be back. Fairness, I would say, I thought the full back line was very good. And I actually thought Limerick's defence was outstanding in the face of an awful lot of pressure, and they walked out with ball. If you told John Kiley he was going to concede 1-11 in Wexford Park, he would have taken your hand off for that. It's hard to believe. The scoreline was so hard to believe in the sense that Limerick usually create, anything between 25 and 30 scoring chances per half, and they ended up with 11 points. It's very, very hard to believe. Hard to believe that they'll have an off day like that again, but fair play to Wexford, just massive.
Do you know, I mean, and actually, I'll go through a couple of the comments first here, and then I'll come back to a couple of points. Conor McDonald looking the best he has been for years. I have to be honest, I thought he caught a couple of great balls in the second half, and you can see obviously we all know his talent there, but I actually wasn't that impressed in the first half. I thought the goal opportunity where he turned and Nicky Quaid had the opportunity to save it, just needed to put the foot in the ground, take another step, and just blast it low past him. But like the potential is there, he has that great hand, but you have to say, I just wasn't kind of feeling that exact same point. River Power says that kind of victory can hang around your neck with pressure going forward. But listen, Wexford needed that. They needed that for their supporters and the players themselves. They got stuck in. Well, do you know what? The fact that they had lost so heavily against Dublin, I think it was important to, at a very minimum, get a good performance here, which they definitely got. And it's big for Darragh Egan because in terms of belief, when you're a younger manager, he's 35, 36 years of age, it's very easy for people to come in and doubt and wonder, is the experience there, even though he was involved with Tip as a coach and they won in All-Ireland. But the question about Limerick's depth is going to be there. Be interested to know what people think on that. Do Limerick throw the ball? A lot of people reckon that they're not hand passing it, they're just throwing it around the place. I have to say, it's not something that really kind of draws my eye too much, but other people really do believe that. The other thing I want to talk about is Wexford's tackling. They were fully committed to the tackle and getting after Limerick. And I was thinking during the first half here, and I was tweeting it, the physical size of Limerick, and their size is ridiculous, and I mean that in a positive sense. And I was thinking Wexford will eventually get worn down here because physically their players aren't in the same league in terms of size. So you just think you can't be in the contact zone for 70 minutes and expect to keep with Limerick. But they did keep with it. And I just wonder if if Wexford were a little bit more, like even more kind of disciplined in the tackle in terms of like holding lads up and shepherding and keeping the hurley in rather than diving in. And I suppose it's hard to be committed to the tackle and not dive in the odd time. But that was a thing that I thought there's a little bit more to come from them there. So I think the potential is even greater with them. And then the other thing is when you have that ball in the contact area, and like I'm sure this is something you agree with in general, Michael, but like trying to work, once you win the ball, because Limerick are so big and their intensity is so strong, you have to feed it out the back door or side door very quickly and work it to the space the other time. And Limerick are so good at stopping you doing that. A few times Wexford lads would get the ball, they'd just hand pass it off in the general direction of someone and hope for the best. Whereas Limerick tend to hand it to someone like, for example, Diarmuid Burns out on the side. He collects it in stride and he's already looking up to see where to pin it. So those are areas where I think that Wexford can kick on again a little bit more, as well as stopping shooting from 100 yards. Like Mark Fanning shot from 100 yards at one stage and I wanted to smash my head off the wall. I mean, less of that, less of the sidelines from 60 yards, especially in those conditions, and work the ball up the field. I don't know what you think.
You were on about the fitness training. I'd say Billy has had them ducking and diving. The remarkable cardiovascular ability to stay going, and even muscular endurance to stay going and going into the tackle like they did. I just loved the way they went at them, and there was no fear of Limerick whatsoever. Even though they were facing up against Gearóid Hegarty and these guys, who you can almost build them up mythically in your head, and you think it can kind of be a bad thing almost, and you can kind of think, how am I going to face up against this lad? He's doing X, Y, and Z in the gym. He's walking around lads in training and walking around lads in matches and stuff like that. But they matched them really well physically yesterday. They can definitely be even more disciplined in the tackle. They can definitely be even better coming out of rucks. Probably trying to go out the back door maybe a bit more rather than even going out the side door. And just making sure that they hold on to the ball. Something Limerick are really, really good at doing. Usually goes out the back door and comes out the side. There's always somebody at the side and they're building straight away. But definitely really good signs from a Wexford point of view. We would not in a million years have predicted that Wexford could get a result like this without Lee Chin. That's just the nature of it, because he has been the heartbeat for the last God knows how long. Now all of a sudden there's a confidence in the younger players that they don't need to rely on the elder statesmen, that they can go and take on the responsibility. Now the goal was a big play, and you can say if forwards just get away with more steps, full stop. I don't care. I was
15 steps.
Yeah, I was sitting beside a referee's assessor up in RD at Loud and Leash the week before, and a forward took about 9 steps, and I looked at him and says, "There's no way a back gets away with that." Not hopefully, he just started laughing. It's just the nature of it. But I do wonder, like Mikey Dwyer was fouled twice in that play. He was fouled probably after about 5 steps, and I'd say he was fouled probably after about 10. Like, it's an unwritten rule, but I wonder, do you need to put it in rule, even when your arm is out and the advantages have been played, that you actually, if you're being fouled and you've taken your 4 steps, that I'm not just throwing out there, that you get 8 steps, that you get double, so that at least it's not, he's clearly breaking the rules. Like, I agree to an extent with what the referee did yesterday, but technically he's breaking the rules. So I think maybe there needs to be some sort of a rule change there, just to actually cover a referee's back. It can't just be based on his judgment, that it is actually in rule, because it happens a lot of the time. And like, if that play had been blown up, that would have just been a free, correct? It wouldn't have been a goal scoring opportunity, would it?
Well, you know what? That was what I was just thinking. When he initially collected the ball, he was running away from goal around the 21. So he kind of collected it and turned, and he was being fouled then. And I was like, well, that's not necessarily a goal scoring opportunity. And then I'm like, the referee's more or less resetting the steps count as he goes here and just saying play on and play on. But it did get to a point then when it was a free in a goal scoring opportunity potentially. So I don't know. I mean, it couldn't get greater.
Yeah, and that's very grey for referees, and you just don't want to be. I just don't feel like we should be putting referees in a position where there is a big grey area, where something like the James Owens incident with Aidan McCarthy can happen. Like, you just need to take those grey areas out of the game. You need to make the game easier for them to referee than not. But it was a great finish, and I think it was Nicky Quaid was almost taken by surprise by it. I'd love to see the statistical breakdown that Limerick will be going through over the coming week, because I think you'd go back. I think I was reading in today's paper. Go back to since the league in 2010 when Tipperary beat them 224 to 8 points. That's the lowest score they've put up in 12 years, and like 11 points is what Limerick score in 25 minutes generally. That's just the way it is. Like, they hit 28, I think, against Clare in that Munster League final. So that's why I have to say, and some people were commenting on it yesterday, and I've said this before, give me that sort of an arm wrestle any day over your high scoring game. You just love those sort of games, because you know anything can happen. Shooting from 100 yards is so much more difficult than on a normal day. It's like the old frame of snooker where you're playing back into balk the whole time. Give me that over a 1-4-7 most days.
Tactical battle.
A tactical battle, yeah.
How many hours of snooker do you think I played this past weekend?
Oh, Janie, you hardly had too much time to play too much, but given that it's a leading question, I'm going to say 8 to 10 hours.
I played pretty close to 8 hours of snooker between Saturday and Sunday. 8 hours of poor snooker now, it must be.
I was chatting to my friend about this recently. Yeah, he plays a lot over in China. He's been living there for the last 10 years. He plays China, yeah. He plays a lot over there now. He's a very good player. He's made a century in his day. But he was just saying this as well. I do think it's interesting with snooker. It's almost an endurance event. Like, there's no point in going playing snooker for 2 hours. If you're going to go play, you go play for about 6 or 7, and it's almost this kind of test of your mental ability. I'm so tired here. We used to play, I hope he's not watching now, but the proprietor of the Burr Social Club in Burr, we used to stay there all through the night. We left at 8 o'clock in the morning some days. We'd be given the keys to lock up. Like, we could have been playing for 12 hours solid. And you'd go through these bouts of just like, you'd come in and out of tiredness. It's like the film The Hustler, if you've ever seen it, where Fast Eddie is nearly fast asleep when Minnesota Fats eventually takes him out. But it's I don't know how we ended up on that segment, but sure, listen, I love me snooker.
Oh God, I love it as well. If anyone has tickets for the Crucible coming up there in late April, early May, send them my way, because I'm very interested in going at this point. Actually, myself and my friend who were playing the last few years, we were wondering, we're not getting any better at potting the ball really, but the safety play, the positional play, that is improving. And I think potting wise, we're terrible. World class, I would say, a positional play at this point. I wouldn't want to overstate it, but world class.
My claim to fame is I'm the king of the container. I'm very good at playing containing safeties.
We'll have to play again. I don't know if people out there would be interested, but I'm very hot on the idea of doing one of these live shows where, you know, maybe a Thursday show, but we're playing a frame of snooker at the same time. Maybe a couple of frames of snooker. I'm on for it if you're on for it.
Yeah, I'll do that someday, yeah.
Come here. I went on Southeast Radio, which is, you know, covers Wexford and so on Saturday, saying it could get ugly in this game in terms of like Limerick winning handily. But, you know, I got that pretty wrong. But Yellow Belly TV, Bill Redmond says, we're known for getting excited in the southeast, but we have to take the positives from yesterday. With no Lee Chin and Rory O'Connor, felt like 50,000 in Wexford Park. Not the best game, but we'll remember the result. And just one other final point I'd make on that. The weather has been terrible in all the games over the weekend. It did feel far closer to Gaelic football because teams were probably trying to mind the ball and not just blast it in the air because it's harder to control in that wind. But I think in general, hurling is getting more like football tactically. But I think those comparisons will sort of, it won't be quite as much like that in the summer when the ball is flying around a little bit more, I wouldn't think. Because, there's more scope for being direct.
Yeah, well, you have to play to the conditions at the moment. Like, there's no point in shooting from 100 yards at the moment. It goes in through the air and just is taken away. Like, so in summertime, the ball will be going a lot more straight and true, and you're not going to be striking at this time of the year, particularly yesterday. You're not going to be striking the ball 80 or 90 yards into a forward line. You just need to play the ball through the hands. More of a running game, which Wexford did really, really well, really efficiently. And when there's a breeze blowing, particularly against the breeze, it's probably one of the easiest ways to hold on to the ball. So very impressed by that. I think a lot of people are focusing too much on Limerick and not enough on Wexford. This is a massive result for Wexford, and it's a real feather in the cap for Darragh Egan starting off in what's a difficult division. They have 2 points on the board now, and we'll be hoping to get a couple of more wins and blood more of these kind of younger players.
Yeah, Lionel Strongjaw, I don't think it's a depth issue. It's just that a few players, particularly Galan and Morrissey, played poorly. Wexford read Limerick's crossfield balls to a tee, broke out of pace, then worked very well for them. D. O'Keefe, a key part of that. Yeah, he was definitely sitting back and trying to cut out ball. Joe LK20, I'm not taking away from Wexford. They deserved the win. But the Limerick bus only arrived half an hour before throw-in, and that can definitely affect the team. I wasn't aware of that. Todd O'Hanlon was man of the match.
Brilliant yesterday.
Yeah,
brilliant.
He really was. Wexford Conal Flood, one to watch this year. Rory O'Connor, a huge loss. Yeah, again, reference to the fact that the bus only arrived a half an hour before. And I'd imagine logistically they have these things to a T. So I'm curious to know what actually happened on the way. Thought Diarmaid Burns played well. Niall Heffernan and Dave Dempsey return will be good for Limerick. Looks like the league will be a war this year. Early 2 rounds, at least 2 ferociously competitive games on TV. Refs tend to allow more steps to the attacker when being fouled. Conor Whelan had one last year, the year before. And of course, the great JC in Thurles versus The Rock. If Clare was reffing the game, there would have been 100 frees. So obviously, every referee is a little bit different. And there was plenty of talk about different referees over the weekend in both codes even. But Cork beaten Clare by 230 to 221. Now, when I was driving down to Portlaoise at the weekend before the Laois against Tipperary match, Clare had themselves in a good spot. They were 1-9 to 9 points ahead in the first half, and Mark Rogers, who I have on my fantasy hurling team and joined the OurGame league on that, he had scored a goal, but they didn't score again in the opening half as Cork hit 1-9 without reply. And it took a bit of a score and run late on from the Banner to put some sort of respectability on this and only lose by 9. They hit 1-3, I think, without reply. Would you read too much into this?
No, I wouldn't. I thought this was kind of like more of an exhibition game than a league game, I have to say. And Cork will always win an exhibition game. They'll always win a high-scoring shootout like this. They started obviously quite slowly, but once they got into their stride, they were very, very good. In fairness, the one thing I would say, a couple of things actually. Kieran Jice was very good as a newcomer and really looked like he was settling in to a stride at senior level in what was really his first competitive game. Really good on the ball, blisteringly quick as well. Really quick. Took on a ball down the sideline there and went around. I'm not too sure who it was. I think it might have been David Reedy, and he'd no right to really go around him, and he did. So that shows the pace he has. His positioning very, very good also. The question mark I would have again is like what are they going to do at centre back exactly? Mark Coleman is brilliant going forward and brilliant on the ball, but like I just don't think he's the player to be building the defence around. I think he's a brilliant halfback, and I think they need to find the centre back. It's still going to be the same conundrum when they come up against Limerick. I wonder as well when the Munster teams are playing each other in the league, like how much are they willing to really give away as well with regards to like when Cork play Clare in the Munster Championship. I don't see Mark Coleman following the centre forward around. Similar when they play Limerick. I'd imagine them to be adopting different tactics for league and championship against the teams that they're going to play in the championship. But that would be still something I would be quite worried about. And it doesn't look like even over the winter months, that they found a solution to that. And centre back is the bedrock of your team, and then they need to know exactly what type of player they want there and what type of role he has to play. I'd be much happier with a holding centre back who doesn't even need to touch the ball that much, genuinely, and is just really well positioned and tightens the defence up a bit, rather than a flashier player who's getting on the ball a lot, scoring going forward, but been taken for 4 or 5 points and leaving massive spaces around him as well.
Well, what about the flip side then? If you've got every other player from 2 to 9 is really good, very disciplined, very good at making sure that your team isn't left wide open, that if your 6 then is a brilliant baller, that like he would be the perfect guy to have there. And I'll put it to you this way: if you put Mark Coleman into the Limerick team, where Declan Hannon, he's brilliant at putting the team on the front foot from centre back. If you threw Coleman in there, do you not think he'd do untold?
Yeah, now just to be clear, I'm not having a go at Mark Coleman here. It's more the defensive structure that Cork have. Do they have a load of those players that you just talked about? I'm not so sure, even though I was happy to see Ger Mellerick in a full back. I'd be happy to see him anywhere, to be honest with you, because he's only going to want to defend. That's all he wants to do. He wants to spoil, he wants to stop, he wants to get on the ball then and bring it out. But, whether Cork have, like I put it this way, like Tim O'Mahony is very good going forward. So then you have, but I wonder about his defensive capability. So then you have potentially a wing back and a centre back who are really good on the ball, but maybe defensive duties aren't their primary goal, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. But then, like, you look at Limerick and they have Declan Hannon, who is a native forward playing centre back. He's brilliant centre back. But they've Kyle Hayes outside him, a guy who played centre back underage, but you think of him as an attacking threat.
Yes, but look at him defending. He's a defender number one. He's a forward when the opportunity arises. That's just something, like Cork were like AWOL in the All-Ireland final for Hegarty's 2 goals last year. Completely AWOL.
But that was just set up of the team, surely, the fact that the half-backs were told to follow their men the whole way out.
Okay, but is there anything to suggest that that's not going to be the same this year? I'm just interested to see. And I thought we might see a different centre back this year, or that they would be looking at a different defensive structure. It doesn't look that way, but we're basing that all on one game. So it was a high scoring game that Cork are always going to win.
Yeah, and if that is the case, if they're going to stay playing the exact same way, I think you could probably end up with the same issue, or basically perishing on the same rock by the end of the year. Patrick Hickey says Clare, Cork and Tip will fight it out for 3rd place in Munster. That's the way it looks. Dermot Ryan was a wing forward till last year. He's now excellent at wing back, having some years so far.
Yeah, but can I just say, I'm just saying that he's a wing back number one. He's a defender number one. I just think Cork are caught between two stools sometimes, where their defenders are more as much attacking as defending. Dermot Ryan is a defender primary number one. He can score when he gets a chance, but he's a defender number one.
I think an awful lot of players who were wing forwards growing up will now be positioned at wing back, because you now want a scoring threat. You now want somebody who's comfortable taking on the man going forward. I mean, look at the weekend. Dermot Ryan being mentioned there. Jack Fagan played wing back for Waterford. He's comfortable carrying the ball. He likes running with it. He can score from distance. I look at Dylan Quirk, he obviously played wing back underage for Tipperary. He played wing back, carrying the ball forward, moving forward, because Laois sat so far back. That kind of at times invited trouble onto the Laois team. Even at club level, what Brendan Maher did from wing back, where he was basically released to drive forward with the ball. And there are plenty of other examples as well. I can't think of them all off the top of the head, but I'm sure plenty of other people have seen those. We'll move on. We'll keep going here, because Galway put up 4-22 against Joe Offaly's 17 points at the weekend. Well, reality hitting home there for Michael Fennelly in a big, big way. It's only a few weeks out since Offaly put it up to Galway, but wow, that's quite a heavy defeat to ship, isn't it?
Yeah, could have been worse, Shane. Could have been 8 to 10 goals, realistically. They fluffed their lines. Evan Nyland hit a penalty wide, which was a bit of a shocker, and a couple of handling errors in around the goal. Galway could have had, this could have been an awful lot worse. And that was what I said to you. Just the big thing for me to take out of the league would be that we're not conceding 6 or 7 goals in games, that we're not getting men sent off when we're frustrated or anything like that. And this was a bit disappointing yesterday. You couldn't say anybody really on the Offaly side probably got the better of their individual duel, and that's always going to be difficult, particularly for the Offaly defenders. Is always going to be difficult. Conor Whelan was just very, very dangerous in the first half. Hit 3 points. John Fleming again has really staked a claim. Really staked a claim. He came in and got 1-2 and was just really, really dangerous. That's like he's in a seriously rich vein of form. For a player that had been, a relative unknown up until probably about 6 or 8 weeks ago, he's been brilliant so far. From a Galway point of view, very, very encouraging. But from an Offaly point of view, Gerard McInerney, who I've never seen score a goal before for Galway, soloed up from about 45 yards out, so picked the ball up and went the whole way down the heart of the Offaly defence before batting it in. Like you just wouldn't see it with one of the Division 1 teams for the last 5 or 6 years. He would have been met by 3 or 4 different people along the way, and we were very, very open and naive. But like that's always going to happen, and it's going to happen. It could happen 3 to 4 more times throughout this league, and you're just hoping that it'll be similar to what Westmead's experience in Division 1 last year, that they'll just learn an awful lot. And they want to stay in Division 1, obviously, but the Joe McDonagh is the big one. Like you're coming from Offaly played in the Christy Ring last year in Championship Hurling, played Sligo, Wicklow, and Derry. Like that's just you have to be realistic. They're going playing Galway. They're playing an elite side. Like it's a huge step up. You're going from teams ranked 18, 19, 20-ish to a team ranked in the top 5 or 6. Yeah. You know what I mean? So there's always going to be a big step up. There's always going to be a bit of pain.
Do you think that the biggest gap that Offaly have to make up is to do with like conditioning, physicality, speed, size, or is it like a speed of hurling thing? So I always think that Offaly have really talented hurlers, but there's a difference between hurling at the lower level against teams that are ranked 20 plus versus the speed of hurling you have to play against Galway. Where do you think the biggest gap is?
Yeah, I wouldn't be that worried about the condition side of things. I think our structures in the last 5 or 6 years have come on massively in that respect. So I think even the Offaly under-20 footballers and that last year were as well conditioned as any team, and they've come through the same process as a lot of the hurlers would have. I think they're quite well conditioned. I think it's the speed of hurling, yeah. 100%. There was a good few times yesterday from the clips I saw, just where the ball didn't go to hand, the ball spilled to ground. The ball spills to ground, a Limerick, Galway, any of these, they'll just eat you up. That's your opportunity gone. And from you being on the front foot, if you got the ball in your hand and going forward, you're on the back foot and you're chasing your tail. So listen, there is going to be a bit of pain. It's going to take some harsh lessons probably to get back up to those lessons. And like, what would I be happy with realistically? I'd be happy with like in 2 or 3 years if we're back reasonably competitive at Division 1. McDonagh staying in Division 1 and been in or around the final of the Joe McDonagh would be the goal for this year.
Yeah, okay. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by OurGame. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Huge selection of jerseys there, as you can see on screen, as you can see us wearing. A reminder as well, Thursday's show is Patreon only, $5 a month. Only takes like a minute or 2 to set up, and that's the main thing. It works out at about 50 cent a show thereafter, which I'm sure if you're a regular watcher isn't too much of an outlay. Do you know, Matthew Tobin sent an interesting comment to me on Twitter. He might have tagged you in too. He goes, any thoughts on the way throw-ins have become a 20-man pile-in that becomes a ruck more in tune with rugby? When did it change from just 2 men? Must have been a dozen of them yesterday, and awful to watch in person, never mind the telly. Yeah, that was something I saw time and time again when I was watching yesterday. It's fairly grim to watch. And even during open play, like if a ball is contested, all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 lads in over it. You see people standing on hurleys. A lad is trying to get a jab lift or a roll lift going, and there's a foot going on top of that. There's a foot going on top of the hurl. It's unsightly. Like, what does a referee do? Because, even for a throw-in, it's very hard to get lads to stand 5 yards back from you. Never mind when the rest of the players on the pitch know that they can encroach. I think that's a tough one. It's nearly going to have to get to an AFL stage where, the linesman for the line ball, he just turns faces, puts his back to play, just gets the ball and goes. Maybe it'll have to get to that stage where a linesman just goes and just hopes for the best.
That's what I used to do in PE class back in the day. I'd be refereeing a match or something like that, and the ball would land out and it'd be thrown to someone or you wouldn't know, and you just, peg the ball back in, and sure, it could end up anywhere. It could end up in the net nearly straight away. But by the rule, nobody should be within 13 of the 2 players that are in for the throw-in. That's by rule. That's something that hasn't been enforced, and lads
it's unenforceable.
Yeah, lads are so keen to get in around the ball, aren't they? Just like lad, it's like I don't know. It's like
they're like calves getting out of a shed.
There you go. I was just going to say it. It's the gate, the slatted shed opening at the end of April, and these cattle seeing the light of day that they haven't seen in about 6 months, and they're just bucking and leaping, and that's exactly what it is at a throw-in. So it is a difficult one. And like, how many times do you see a throw-in leading to another throw-in? Leading to a throw-in, leading to a ruck, leading to another throw-in. And that's, you're trying to get away from that. So, yeah, it doesn't happen as much in the summer as it does in the winter or the spring, just because of conditions. But that might be something that they'll have to look at in time if it is something that starts blighting the game during the summer. Okay, well, Tipperary beat Laois 21 points to 114. I might let you turn the gun on me here. Yeah, I was only reading bits and pieces of this and saw clips of this. First things first, conditions look absolutely atrocious. Horrendous. Like, really, really bad. But this was relatively tight the whole way. And Tip didn't have Laois at arm's length like we probably both thought they would. Like, what were your takeouts as a journalist, number one, and as a Tip supporter, number two? The style of play that Tipperary were implementing, were they carrying the ball a lot more? Were they striking the ball longer? Talk me through that. Well, they were definitely trying to carry the ball. Like, there was a marked change in how Tipperary were playing this match. It was more in line with what you'd see with Limerick. Like, I have to say it. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because, like, I was on Tip FM at half time, and I'm not really sure if they were expecting me to say it. But after, going in 11-7 ahead at half time, and it was a mistake-riddled game because the weather was just horrendous. Players, like, they might miss a lift, and all of a sudden they're trying to turn, but they're turning like a shopping trolley because the turf, which, and it was really well-maintained pitch, but, like, it was just so soggy, it was impossible to turn. But I was there saying, I think this is good, because I'm tired of watching Tipperary take shots from 100 yards for the last God knows how many years, probably throughout most of Tipperary's history. I want to see the boys move the ball through the hand, because it's the days of turning good possession into a 50-50 ball and thinking you'll win in All-Ireland are more or less gone, because Limerick are a team that win through, a whole pile of marginal gains here, and they just don't give the ball away. And I think Tipperary tried to do it in the worst of conditions, and they won the game, which is fine. And, like, you might try to play that same game plan next weekend against Kilkenny, and if it's poor weather again and it doesn't come off, or if Kilkenny are particularly in your face with, the high pressure game that they like to play, it may break down. But I think Tipperary have to rep this over and over again to get to a point where the 3 and 4 hand passes that they try to do, hitting the man off the shoulder, changing the angle so that, I'm running one way, all of a sudden Barry Heffernan goes this way and the defender has to try and adjust. And it's very hard to keep into that if Tipperary are doing it well. Like 3 or 4 times in the game, no, even more, Tip did these running moves where they changed the angle of attack and got glorious scores. I mean, there was times where I was like, this is what I want to see. Now, there was a huge amount of the game where I was looking at it thinking, this is not particularly impressive here. But I just like the fact that they were trying to do the right things. You'll forgive it when it doesn't come off. Now, from Laois's point of view, I thought Laois were very good. And the first 20 minutes or so, I was like, you know what? Laois are actually using the ball better than Tipperary here. They're a bit smarter in how they're playing it. Like, Podge Delaney was the sweeper in the back line, and they were drawing a huge amount of players out the field. So much so that Cathal Barrett, who's a cornerback, he was out around midfield and even wing forward at times. He scored a point from around the 65 in the Laois half at one stage. But I thought Podge Delaney played really well. At times, Tipperary hit the spare man. And this is the teething problems with how they're trying to play, especially in these conditions. Like Seamus Kennedy once or twice he was playing centre-back sweeper. He hit the ball straight to Podge Delaney. But I thought that Laois played quite well. And I mean, early on in the game, it was 4 points apiece after 15 minutes. Jack Kelly had a goal chance saved. Then Tipperary went on a run of a nice few scores. Then there was another couple of goal chances that Ben Conroy, he had one straight at Brian Hogan, and then he did a swing and a miss for the follow-up. And I thought they were quite good, but the only problem is they were so reliant on Picky Maher. He scored 1-8. 5 of those were frees. Just on that, I was going to ask you who you gave the goal to. I see a lot of match reports giving the goal to Enda Rowland, and I watched it clearly on TV last night, and it was blatantly obvious that when Rowland poked in the ball completely changed direction. So I was just going to ask you that, actually. Yeah, at the time, actually, as it turned out, right as the free was being taken, I looked down to just jot a note because I was just thinking Enda Rowland will blast this over the bar because, he's such a long puck of a ball. And I looked back up and I actually happened to miss it, but I was chatting to Shane Brophy of the Nina Guardian,
and he was quite insistent that Picky Maher had got a slap of the ball on the way in. So I kind of went with that because he was just so insistent about it. But the problem for Laois is that they're looking at Enda Rowland scoring 3 points all from frees. Picky Maher got 1-3 from play. James Keys came on and had a brilliant spell when he came on. He scored 3 from play. But after that, no one else scored from play. And Paddy Purcell got himself red carded for a bit of a dunt on Craig Morgan.
It's a bit silly now.
Yeah, at the time I thought red card. I watched the incident then last night on the Sunday game, and I was like, I'm not quite sure if it was, but I'll have to go with my initial reaction, which was where I wasn't too far and away, and I was looking down from the media.
You can't
box.
give him the opportunity. You can't give the referee by swiping. You're just giving the referee the opportunity to show your edge. You know.
Yeah, and Jason Ford, he was quite good for Tipperary. He scored, I think, 5 points from play and 6 from placed balls. He did miss a penalty, but the way, like, it was saved over the bar, but the way he set it up for Jake Morris, just that little flick between his own legs, stick flick straight through, put Jake Morris away. That was brilliant.
Do you know what I love about Jason Ford and the really good players? Conditions are irrelevant. Like, if he gets a ball 80 yards out and it doesn't even have that much time, he's still going to put it over the bar. Like, it's just the really, really classy players. I really admire it because I'd never be able to do anything like that myself. Like, the ball, if I went to strike in a wet day, the ball would go veering off. But they're really good players. Their technique is that good that stands up to any scrutiny.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of compliments on the sweet fade here, so I'm happy enough with that, lads.
I would have said you're a bit old for a fade, but listen.
Craig Morgan might be better suited to that deep role. Dan was asked to play. He lacks the physicality, but has all the hurling. I thought Craig Morgan, who played cornerback, was really, really good. I would have always said this lad, a former under-20 All-Ireland winning captain, he has all the hurling, but did he have the nastiness that's required to play a cornerback?
The dog.
And he showed, like, in these conditions, I think if you stand up and play well, and he was, from a tip point of view, the man of the match, probably would have given it to Picky Maher overall. I'd have said he was really good here. He won a couple of balls against the head, including against Picky Maher. So I thought he was really good. Seamus Kennedy played as number 6. And, I've always kind of talked to Seamus Kennedy being a starter here, but I'm not sure that number 6, even though I talked about it before, like, the conditions were terrible, don't get me wrong, but like a couple of times there was high balls coming in and you want your sweeper just catching that ball. He has an opportunity to catch it, go up there and get it at its highest point. And because of the conditions, he was more waiting for it to come down and touching it down to himself. And in those conditions, it's going to slide off the hurley, which it did once or twice. Now, I think he's a very important player for Tipperary, but I'm not quite sure if it's at number 6 as far as I'm concerned. I thought Dylan Quirk was okay there at wing back, did plenty of good things. He has the athleticism. He looked very good 2 years ago when he was playing corner forward in a league game against Waterford. I think he scored 4 or 5 from play and got man of the match. And this was after having a year off, more or less, because of a heart issue. But he looked very jittery when he played a couple of times in the league last year. Just didn't look fully at ease with the situation. But he looked a lot better here. And I'd imagine he'll get more game time. Jake Morris, very good. Mark Keogh is a player that I'd be very excited about from a Tipperary point of view. Scored 4 points in horrendous conditions here. He's obviously playing with UCC at the moment also, but he was good. I think from, like, I'm looking at what, or I was listening to Cheddar after the game, and he was talking about saying we're really disappointed. Now, he didn't have a view of the red card. He didn't see it. He said, we have to get to the stage where we move away from moral performances and all of that. There's a match to be won, and this is our home ground here. We're proud to play here, and it's a great crowd and great credit to the team when a man down. Now, you would think that Tipperary had won by 10 points the way I've been talking about them so positively here. I'm sure there are a lot of people in Tipperary who think that wasn't good enough, that you need to be beating Laois by more. But as we've seen with Kilkenny not exactly blown away Antrim and Tipperary not blown away Laois, these two aren't the number 1 and 2 like they were for, a spell there at different times. So this is the reality now. Tipperary are kind of switching things up a little bit, and I'm talking more about the potential and the direction they're moving. But like for Laois, like, they do need a breakthrough win here and there just to kick things on another level again. I wonder, can they get it during this league?
Yeah, well, they were really, obviously Eddie did have a couple of breakthrough wins, and they had a breakthrough win against Dublin and were very close to beating Clare then the qualifiers a year later in Nolan Park. And Cheddar's first year, the second term, they were very close to beating Waterford again in Nolan Park last year. So those wins, like no more than Wexford beating Limerick yesterday, those wins, they just keep you going and reinforce your belief that everything is going well. But from a Laois point of view, I would be much happier that they're really, really competitive, even if they're not winning a couple of these games. That they're like, last year's league was a bit of a write-off. Whereas they look to have, you know, a lot of the best players are fit from the start of the year. And Richie Fitzsimon's there. He's a barber's. He's looking for me to go in to get a chop off him, I'd say. Not for a while, Richie, I'd say.
Look what Flash says as a follow-up. Verney has a head of hair that'd make a barber cry with the amount they've cut.
Aaron Whelan and Brian's son famously went for a job interview in Athlone and brought me as his model. It took him about an hour to cut me hair, sure. Like, it's like, this is waves that you wouldn't believe. But just on Laois, I think it's very positive from them that they're hitting the ground running this year. They'd really be focusing on that Antrim game, but they'd also be focusing on, you know, taking a hop off Kilkenny. If Antrim can do it 2 years in a row, no reason why Laois can't do it. But it definitely looks like they're going to be a lot more consistent from the start this year. And if they are, they're giving themselves a great chance of taking a scalp or two at different stages.
Yeah, keep the comments flowing in here. I think this was an interesting one from SSRI. Hasn't been a great month for tip hurling. Is Colin Bonnar under pressure already? Obviously, the loss to Kerry last month and winning by Laois, or beating Laois by 4 points this month. I think, like, on the face of it, you would think, yeah, that's not exactly Tip flying and heading for an All-Ireland. And I'm not saying Tipperary are. I don't see Tipperary winning an All-Ireland this year, but I think they have the players that they can build a team that can do that.
Just on that, Shane,
I don't see this pressure.
Yeah. No Seamus Callanan, no Noel McGrath, no Ronan Matter. You know, a lot of big names missing. I think I predicted Ronan Matter would be named captain. I think he's the ideal
by a landslide,
player.
By the way.
Yeah,
it was players ballot, and it was a
I think that's a good way to go about it. And not being smart, the players feel like they have a bit of a control in the process as well. But Tip were trying something, well, I'd say radically different the other night by what you're saying, without a lot of their elder statesmen and missing a lot of experience. So I think it's just a matter of just getting the victory in awful conditions. And the fact that they persisted with what they did, regardless of the conditions, I think is promising going forward. And similar to, I'm not saying Tip and Offaly are the same, but there is going to be a bit of pain when you're trying to do something that's almost alien to you. There is going to be some turbulence along the way.
Grode Howley says, can't see Tip getting out of Munster transitional stage. #trust the process. Do you know, if Tipperary to have a really big season, I think Barry Heffernan is going to be the man. Like, he is so suited to this sort of style of play. And, you know, we've talked about all the big wing backs that are out there at the moment. Kyle Hayes, Tim O'Mahony, there's plenty more I'm not mentioning. But I think Barry Heffernan, like, you know, I've talked him up a nice bit, but I just think he's so suited to this game plan. He's so smart on the ball. Like, if he's running at you 6'4", he's so big and rangy, and, you know, throw the ball out in front of you, put it up in the hurley. Like, how do you stop him? I think he can be a massive player for Tipperary this year. One thing that I was a little bit kind of, I was a bit perplexed by was a couple of times Tipperary had frees on their own 65. Now, let's put into context the weather here. It was absolutely atrocious weather. It driving rain, very, very soft sod. Hurleys are absolutely sodden. And a couple of times, Jason Ford went over to take frees in the first half, and Dan McCormack ushered him away. And instead of Dan, like, obviously Dan isn't going to be looking to drive over frees from 100 yards, but instead he just bet the ball up into the far right corner for Dennis Maher to go out and collect. And I just thought it was odd because, you know, in weather like that, like, it's going to be very hard to hit a precise ball. But I just thought it was weird that Jason Ford would be stepping away for Dan McCormack to hit a free. And by the way, Dennis Maher, it was Dennis Maher conditions. He played pretty well. He didn't score, but he set up a number of scores there. Still, it'll be interesting to see. I'm not entirely sure if he's going to be playing in a Tip team come summer, but I can see him having a good league.
Yeah, no, he obviously one of many new faces that got their chance. And Bonner's going to probably rotate a fair bit in the sense that he's going to have to reintroduce some of the older players that we mentioned. Noel McGrath, Callan, Ronan Matter obviously came on near the end of the game the other night. But lots of new faces are going to get lots of new faces, and some faces that we saw before as well, like Dennis Matter, are going to get chances to shine. And if he has a definite way of playing, that there could be a couple of bolters that maybe we haven't predicted that will suit that style a bit more, maybe, because the traditional kind of long ball style maybe suits a certain type of player. They're going to need an awful lot of mobility. Like between 5 and 12, you need crazy mobility now. That's just the nature of it. You have to be able to get in huge hits. You have to be able to cover huge ground. And I'm sure that's something that Bonnar will definitely be going after this year. But yeah, listen, the result was really the only thing that matters in horrendous conditions.
River Power says Barry Heff has everything physically. Does he have it mentally? I think absolutely. He was on an All-Ireland winning team a couple of years ago and was brilliant. And it was his first real season in 2019. So I definitely think he does. That was madness from Dan. Madness. Nobody should be telling Ford to go away from a free. I think it must have been a pre-planned thing. That's the only reason I can, the only thing I can come to. Gerard Howley, is Paddy Creedon from Sarsfield's in the tip panel. Thought he had a very good club campaign. He might still be with the under-20s. I don't think he's in the senior panel.
I don't think so, no.
I'm sure he's on their radar. Right, so the Dublin match against Waterford, I have to say I found this a bit of a grind. 21 points to 215. It was a draw. There was a huge amount of cards. 13 yellows, 2 blacks, 2 reds. Red cards for Conor Prunty at the end and Cian O'Callaghan, both for second cards. Keane's was a black card and then a yellow card laid on. I don't think either players will have massive complaints here. But it does continue what's an unbeaten start to the year for Dublin. A couple of penalties for Waterford. Cian O'Callaghan fairly cleaned the clock of Colin Dunford when he was coming through in the first half.
The rap.
The rap, and Keane is made of iron, so I can't imagine Colin Dunford was feeling too good after that. And Stephen Bennett slammed that one away, a very good penalty, no stopping that. The second one then, it was Sean Brennan came out to meet him more or less between the 14 and 21. And I wondered, does this count as a black card foul? So Sean Brennan got a black card, so he was off for 10 minutes, and obviously it was buried into the back of the net. By the way, it had been a lovely build-up. Tom Byrne did a nice ball into Austin Gleeson, and he, what seemed blindly, did a stick pass into the centre for the penalty to be won. I actually can't remember who won the penalty off the top of my head. Was it Jack Prendergast? I think it was. But I actually wondered, I was just looking for the official rules, couldn't quite find the official rules. Was it technically a black card? Either way, Stephen Bennett hit a poor enough penalty, and I suppose it was harsh on Alan Nolan. He was just coming in, possibly with cold hands. I'm not sure how much goalkeepers warm up. You know the way, if you're a sub outfield, you're going to be going up and down the whole lot, giving it the big one. But that was probably a tough one to save there for him. But he would expect to save it otherwise. But Dublin left a lot of chances behind them here. Would you be looking at this as a positive where Dublin are still unbeaten, or you should be beating a Waterford team that has shown up here and probably is, just didn't hit the usual levels?
I'd say it was probably a missed opportunity from a Dublin point of view. They're obviously flying coming into this game, and I think they had the chances to win it, and probably had put themselves into pole position to win it. The second penalty was probably a bit of a game turner. I'm not so much you. Like I enjoyed the last 15 minutes of it in particular. Maybe it's just because it's a close game and it's dramatic, and you really didn't know what way it was going to swing. But again, like 2:15 to 21 in Parnell Park. It's like you would have thought both of them would have hit into the 20, 23, 24 points or scores at least. But it just wasn't that type of a game. A very kind of attritional game, very, very physical game as well. I think it's probably a little bit of a missed opportunity from a Dublin point of view, because they had, probably a particularly strong team starting out. But as you say, at least they're still unbeaten. I'd say outside a tip, I'd say the games probably get a good bit easier from them from here on in. They have given themselves a chance now. I still think it will be Waterford and Dublin in the last two, or probably tip maybe close by as well. But I would probably be favouring Waterford and Dublin to come out of this group.
Yeah, a couple of comments flying in here. Red Lad says, is Owen O'Donnell the best full back right now? He was immense, particularly when Cian O'Callaghan got sent off. Dublin lost that match themselves with poor discipline decisions.
Owen O'Donnell is an absolute wrecking ball. He's such a good player. Just keeping him fit and injury free is huge for Dublin. He can dominate a game from full back. And even yesterday, we haven't seen him do it much. But the ball Dublin filtered the ball back the field quite a bit, particularly when they were going into congested areas. And they filtered the ball back to O'Donnell at one stage, and he put over a point from nearly his own 45. That was something that I thought was an interesting one. From a Dublin point of view, they didn't always have to go forward, particularly when they were 45 yards out. They were coming laterally, they were coming back. They know they have lads that can shoot from distance, so you don't always need to go down the throat. There's times to go down the throat, there's times to go forward, then there's times to maybe circle back and flick it back out. And that was something good that they did. Just something off topic as well, Shane. You said about Seamus Kennedy taking some sharp puckouts and striking them aimlessly. And I'd say Laois probably invited them to do that, because that was something that Wexford invited Limerick to do yesterday a lot. They let them have the sharp puck out and then didn't really press up on them and just stayed with their men, but kind of coaxed him or duped him into striking the ball long. And it was just something I think that teams are going to try and do an awful lot more, particularly from the short ball. It's, teams are, generating so many attacks from the short ball now, particularly from a sharp puck out, if you can get momentum and break the tackle. But a lot of teams are trying to not let the player break the tackle at all now, and just really, really force them to stand in space almost and strike it long. And it happened a couple of times even in the Waterford Dublin game yesterday as well.
Yeah, you want to set traps for a team now. You want to pick out who do we think is the least comfortable on the ball that will allow to have the short puck out, and basically try and send them down a channel, set a trap for them. You see that in Gaelic football all the time. You see it in an awful lot of sports where you try and set up a trap and then sort of strip them. Craig Morgan actually ended up receiving an awful lot of the short puck outs for Tipperary. He did quite well in them. Barry Nash, I think, this is a guy who's played in the forwards for years. I think teams would be less likely to allow him to have all these short puck outs. Yeah. But then you're not necessarily too buzzing if Sean Finn is carrying out all the puck outs either.
Yeah, you don't have many options there. To be honest, it happened once definitely with Dan Morrissey yesterday. He took a sharp ball and it was an aimless puck out that he put down the field. It's funny, my cousin plays for Belmont in Offaly, and I didn't even realise that we were playing them in the championship this year, and we must have been only playing maybe one inside, and he ended up getting a lot of the sharp puck outs. And he came over to me after the match and said, "Jay-Z, you must have no regard for me at all. You were just letting me take the puck outs the whole time." And it's far from it. But that's usually what you do. You do usually try and target a cornerback maybe, or a fullback that's not that comfortable on the ball, and let them have it.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with our goalkeeper last year and saying, if you want to hit me, like I was playing fullback at the time, if you want to hit that sharp puck out to me, go ahead. I'm happy to receive it from me anytime. But as I'm about to catch the ball, sort of give me an audio clue to whether I've got somebody coming on me or whether I can turn and go and take my time. Like, just shout time so I can sort of turn and know I'm going to be under no massive pressure. Because, I think growing up, most lads, they're like, I need to get this hot potato out of my hand as quickly as possible so I'm not done for steps or I don't overcarry or whatever. So you need the goalkeeper letting you know, hey, just hand it straight back to me and I'll blast it, or turn and take your time. And you need time to nearly look up and see what are my options. And as a fullback, if you've got somewhat decent conditions and you have a bit of space, maybe even turn around, have a look, hop the ball off the ground and go again. I think more and more will move in that direction. Kev Kyo says, fantastic in Parnell yesterday to have the kids out in the pitch at halftime and full time. My young lad was thrilled. Makes today for them. I believe it was the same down in Wexford.
That's great. It is great to see it as well.
It's great, but there need to be certain areas of the pitch that are just kept for the substitutes to warm up. So I think there's a bit of both. Lads are there to do a job to win a game, so you need to have a little bit of both. Todd Fergal-Whiteley and Kieran Bennett with some battle in the corner. I'd say I thought Kieran Bennett looked a bit. I really like him as a player. I think he looked a bit of a fish out of water at cornerback. I'd say I know he was the travelling sort of cornerback, and maybe Liam Cahill was hoping to sort of punish Dublin with that, use that against them in a way with a really good quality hurler, but I didn't think that worked out. The brawl in the 48th minute, it was 14 points to 1-7 to Dublin at the time. Danny Sutcliffe, he got a yellow. A helmet popped off there, and Iarla Daly went to the referee, and it can be hard to tell in those situations. I think there's too many headlocks going on. That's definitely a big issue. Like you said, don't strike out, but you can grab a lad and you can kind of headlock. So the headlocks may have to stop. But also, I think Kartik Daly, he might be in a small bit of bother because he seemed to go in a little bit too recklessly. So, but Waterford did score the next 3 points and kicked on. But I don't know if a whole pile is going to be done about these brawls. It'll probably have to be something fairly bad happens before the GA move on this one.
Yeah, well, hopefully not. Hopefully that it would. I don't know. Maybe something's going to have to go in rule about a headlock as well, or something, or a takedown of sorts. Because it does seem like that players are being encouraged to almost resort to that rather than striking out, because if you strike out, you're gone. Just on Carhack Daly, I thought he was really promising now yesterday, I have to say, similar to Kieran Joyce for Cork. Just as a new player coming in, could have easily been a fish out of water, regardless of how good you are, just because it's such a big step up physically and even tactically as well. But thought he did a lot of nice things yesterday. Iarla Daly's helmet coming off, I actually didn't look like to me that his helmet was pulled off just from looking back on it, but he definitely gesticulated towards the referees and officials that it had been taken off, but I'm not so sure. It's definitely not something you want to see much of, and you don't like to see helmets coming off, and you don't want to see somebody suffer a serious neck injury or something like that before something is done.
Yeah, Kevin Verney is any relation. From Colin O'Rourke last night, there's a rule in the book about contributing to a melee. As far as I'm concerned, the referee was perfectly entitled to send off those players. I'm sure he's talking about the Tyrone Armagh match.
Me Uncle Kevin, how are you? Tell you a good one about Uncle Kevin, and he won't like this. He used to go around selling tickets. In houses in Bonnar, and he was asked into the Breen family house, and he got stuck into a box of afternoon tea and ended up finishing the whole box of afternoon tea, and they pulled out another box by the time before he was gone. So that man can eat biscuits better than anyone. He won't like that.
Uncle Kevin, you have the right to reply, and I will put it on screen. James Daly said it was a long drive home from Wexford yesterday. They fully deserved the win. Work rate is unreal. Limerick were not at the pitch of it. Lads looked very leggy. I'm expecting a huge reaction against Galway. So next game on the menu here. By the way, a couple of other players played quite well for. I thought DJ Foran was very good at wing back. I also would like to mention that in the Dublin half backline, they had James Madden playing yesterday. Paddy Smith, who I'm not sure. I don't see him playing centre back come championship. I think he'll be back in the full back line, but it's obviously a bit of a needs must there at the moment. And John Bellew played wing back also. And I just think you have Liam Rush to come back in that team. You have Dara Gray, who's probably doubling up playing Fitzgibbon Cup at the moment. He can come back in. Sean Moran is not even getting a look in at the moment. Like the options that Matty Kenny has developed there, and even think of Keane Boland, he's to come back into the reckoning somewhere. Like he has an awful lot of players there, but I think they did look a little bit shy up front at times and didn't necessarily threaten for goal. Some days Ronan Hayes does brilliant stuff, and some days he does stuff, he might fumble a simple ball that's in his hand. And within the same game or even the same move, he might do a little bit of both. But if he can really kind of kick on, and a couple of more of those other players that we've talked about there, that potential is still there.
No, there's plenty of potential. Good. Like Paddy Smith was probably playing out of position yesterday. As you say, John Bellew was getting a start. Maybe they wouldn't be getting before. There's still loads of guys to come back in. You just wonder, and someone was on to me kind of last night just saying, I do think there's a vibe building about Dublin. I do think there's a confidence building, even just about, from your average kind of hurling punter. Like people, I definitely do anyway, and I'm sure you do too. I want to see another team breaking that glass ceiling and getting in around that top 3 or 4 teams. And I think they have the potential to do it. I just wonder, are they missing? They have Donald Burke to score from far out, and they have Ronan Hayes at the edge of the square. Just that type of really kind of knacky little corner forward that'll get 3 or 4 a game, nearly every game. Like a Peter Casey style player, a different type of a problem for teams. Compared to the physical power of Ronan Hayes and kind of the fleet-footedness of Donald Burke, but definitely looks like they have a lot more options. And the lads were chatting on League Sunday last night about Matty Kenny being under pressure. I don't see that. I don't see that because I think last year was a good year, and take COVID out of it, and they could well be Leinster champions. But this year, I think they give the league a right good shot. I think they'll give Leinster a right good shot as well. And I'd be amazed if they weren't at least in the last 6 and potentially in the last 4 of the All-Ireland race, particularly coming out of Leinster, given that they would be, if they were to win Leinster, they'd be straight into an All-Ireland semi-final. But I think there's plenty of potential there for them.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see him being under pressure at all. I don't hear that within Dublin circles to anyone I'd be talking to. I thought they looked like they tired a small bit during the game. Like Conor Burke, I keep talking about how good he is. He made a couple of tired mistakes. He looked a little bit tired as that game wore on. And I wonder, maybe are they in a nice patch of heavy training also at the moment. But look, they do have plenty of talent there, but it's kicking on to the next level. Don't forget, at the end of the 2020 season, which was played in the depths of winter, they were absolutely bet off the park by Cork down in Thurles. So they've brought them a nice bit since, and just the feeling that the panel has developed a nice bit in the meantime. And I didn't even mention Jake Malone, who's another option who didn't feature in that game yesterday. There's plenty there. So just a reminder, we're brought to you by OurGame.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Huge amount of jerseys available there, including the ones we're wearing. Also, if you want to get Thursday's show, that's going to be Patreon only from now on, a $5 per month. I'd say the main thing is just taking the 2 minutes it takes just to sign up after that, because it works out about 50 cents a show, which I'm sure you'll agree is decent old value. Michael, Kilkenny beating Antrim 2-15 to 3-9. That's not a heavy victory in any way, shape or form. Kilkenny are without the Ballyhale lads at the moment. But it's not like Antrim haven't put up good performances in the league the last couple of years. They went to Nolan Park last year and performed well. So maybe this is just a sign that Antrim are just going to keep coming.
This is a bit of a lost opportunity, Shane, from an Antrim point of view. I kind of sensed that, I saw them up in Darver against Galway, and I liked what I saw. I liked where they were physically. They're going down to Nolan Park, playing a Kilkenny team, absent so many really, really marquee players, and missing, at least 3 of their best forwards. And they went down to Nolan Park, and the great chance to level it, had a goal chance at the end, a very good save from Darren Brennan, who made up for a mistake earlier in the game. But I think Darren Gleeson will be. I think he'll be disappointed with the final result. I think they would have really aimed to get something out of it, even if it was a draw. I think I had a quick quote from Darren Gleeson. He just said it was a disappointing result. When we had our purple patch, we didn't make enough of it. They got a purple patch after half time and went 7 points up. We came back hard at the end, but it wasn't enough. And it was like Mossy Keown was probably really the difference between the two teams. He hit 2-2. Again, another player who was, I think it was in 2018 when Kilkenny won the league. He was outstanding throughout the league, and you're kind of thinking this guy's going to nail down a spot in the forward line. And it's kind of been on and off ever since. But when he's on, he's very, very good. Just a couple of quick points from a Kilkenny point of view. As I said, Darren Brennan made kind of the match-winning save after kind of making amends for a mistake earlier on. The full back line, I believe, was shaky enough. Just a quick one as well. The fact that there was no coverage of this game as the only Division 1 game that they showed no coverage of last night on Alliance League Sunday is very disappointing from a supporter's point of view, from a taxpayer's point of view, from a TV license payer's point of view. I think it was very, very disappointing, and particularly with Antrim being the only Ulster team that are competing at this level. Just I just don't think that was right at all. I don't see why cameras were sent to the other 5 games and not here. But Mikey Butler hurled well enough in the corner, but Tommy Walsh was in a bit of trouble, and Conor Delaney picked up another injury at full back, so he had to go off early enough. So that's worrying. David Blanchfield, who we have kind of flagged as one for the future, was very, very good at wing back. Midfield, James Maher struggled on the other wing, and James Bergen struggled as well. They were both taken off. Paddy Deegan, very good midfield. Mikey Carey was quiet enough beside him. Pádraig Walsh was up in the forward line, which be interesting to see. Brian Cody doesn't usually just put someone up there because they're missing guys. So be interesting whether he stays there or not. If Conor Delaney is injured.
Did you put him on your fantasy team? Because he's down as a back in the fantasy team. I threw him in.
Oh, you're dead right. I did. Yeah, those are the sort of ones you want to make hay with. John Donnelly was decent up top as well. Tom Phelan on his debut played well enough too. But there was a lot of misfiring cats yesterday, and they were lucky to come out of that with a win. And just Brian Cody said after, we were very, very average overall, which is unlike him. So they must have been particularly average.
Yeah, I think that's it's another good showing for Antrim, but just like Cheddar Plunkett said, you kind of have to convert those at some stage. And Darren Gleeson talked about that purple patch that Kilkenny got after half time and went 7 points up. But it is difficult to bridge those gaps, because it's talking about hurling at that same intensity that those Kilkenny players are hurling at both at club and county level and underage level for years. Like, the more exposure that Antrim get, the better.
And just as well as that, Shane, when you're chasing a lead against those teams, they just have that bit of nous and bit of know how to close out a game. Whereas if you're the front runner, it's an awful lot easier, and you have that confidence. Whereas invariably, the favourite, when they're holding off a comeback, they just are a bit smarter, slow things down, really maximise their opportunities when they come. Just disappointing from an Antrim point of view, because there was a really, really good chance there.
Barry John Maher asks, lads, do you think Cork should try to win the National League outright? When was the last time Cork did win a title at national level? Surely it would be psychologically a positive. They last won the league in 1998, last won the All-Ireland in 2005. So I think it'd be no harm to actually win it, at this stage, because they know that they're hurling. So why not go with it?
I don't they need to change this narrative of Cork being only a top of the ground team, and they need to be able to
games, the tight game thing, which they did a bit last year.
Yeah. They need to be able to, they need to prove that they can get down and dirty. Parky Queeve the other night, albeit in monsoon conditions, the pitch was still absolutely immaculate. It was like, it's perfect for them. They've only 2 home league games. That's one of them gone. So they're going to have to, going to be away 3 times, probably in more kind of provincial style venues, one of which could be Wexford Park, I think. So they're going to have to prove that they can win games in tight pitches on, bad pitches where it's not going to come up first time. So I see no reason. I see no reason why you shouldn't go. And every team shouldn't go to win the league. So they need to park that Limerick game, which I think might be next up. Actually, they need to park that game, the result in the All Ireland final, and go and try and win a title. You can only win a certain amount of titles in a year. Cork can only win. They didn't play Munster League. They can only win the league, Munster, and All Ireland. Why not try and win all three of them? I see no reason why not.
Ronan C says Kilkenny had to start to find some new blood somewhere. Aging the big names and the bench needs more grit. Mikey O'Sullivan says Cork v Offaly deferred next Sunday on TG Carr. What do you reckon, Mick?
Loving it. I'm not sure if it's deferred. I think it could be on the TG4 app. I think I saw this morning, but I'll be there. Hopefully, selling lotto tickets beforehand and then doing a bit of work for the Independent after. That's the plan, anyway.
So we'll move on from the Division 1A and 1B. Division 2A, Meath beat Kildare 18 points to 15. That's a very good result there. But of course, all the Naas players, they were away winning a Club All-Ireland. Westmeath beat Kerry 315 to 115. Of course, the Kilmoyley lads, they were away also. They weren't involved. They were in that same Club All-Ireland against Naas. And then Down against Carlow. There seems to be a big story rumbling here. Now, first of all, in terms of the game, Down won 210 to 112. So that's a great victory for Down. Atrocious conditions. And I heard it was horrible for the free takers. And I noticed that at one stage that lads weren't allowed in with the towels even, in terms of like the fussiness that was going on. There was a huge gale blowing down the field in this. Carlow were a point down at half time after playing against it. And I think they were a bit upset that the free count was 25 to 14. But Down manager Ronan Sheehan, now he has alleged that his players were subjected to sectarian abuse during the game. By the way, Mark Fisher scored the goal late on that kind of sorted the game out and decided the result. But, and I think this is a story that's going to be rumbling on here. And I did make some inquiries, and from a Carlow point of view, they feel that this wasn't the case. And look, if I'm to play devil's advocate, obviously, number one, you do not want sectarian abuse going on. The devil's advocate side is, you nearly have to sort of name and shame if you want to make these allegations. And this is the tricky part, because like, if I was to say you made a certain allegation against me, if I want to sue you in a court of law, if you've made that claim publicly and you've named me, you're going to have to prove in court with the Irish defamation laws that you didn't say it. The burden of proof is on you, the person that I've accused. Whereas in other countries, it's the other way around. You have to prove that your name has been injured in the eyes of right-thinking members of society to win a claim like that. So this is the thing now that, if abuse has been made, you do want to highlight it, but then really you need to be saying who said it so that you can, do something about it properly and have someone punished. Because otherwise you're just making a claim that just goes into the ether, and you don't know, should Carlow have to defend themselves when nobody has been named? I mean, it's a difficult topic to even talk about because you have to talk around it a little bit. But this does seem like it's going to be rumbling on a little bit, Michael.
But it's not the first or last time. It was not the first time we've heard something like this, and it definitely won't be the last.
And like it's horrible. If it happened, it's shocking and horrible.
Oh, 100%, yeah. You obviously would. You can't. You have to give. Obviously, innocent until proven guilty, and you have to give anyone the benefit of the doubt. So it's not proven that anything was said, and hopefully it wasn't, and it's just some sort of misunderstanding. But tension seemed to be really kind of bubbling up in Ballycran. Tom Mullally, who was obviously euphoric the day before, having brought Naas to All-Ireland Intermediate Club glory, he was actually sent off at the end of the game. I think he was sent off along with Sean Murphy. Both of them were showing the line near the end of the game. And Tom didn't pull any punches after. He just said, what we expect out of GA is fair play. We travelled yesterday up here to Down, and we would expect that the referee would at least call it fair. So they're obviously, feel very aggrieved with the decisions. And this result could have big ramifications for who is in the promotion shake-up at the end of it all. And I'd say Tom is more than aware of that and feels like that an injustice has been done to them. But you probably haven't heard the last of this from either side, I'd say.
Yeah, I think Sheehan said afterwards on RT Sport, it may only be loose words for the person saying it, but it does impact on players given who they are and what some of their families endure to play our national games. If we had lost today, I would have said nothing, as people would have said it was only sour grapes. But when we won, I thought it was important to highlight it, as it's an insult to Gaels up here. So, I mean, I kind of play in devil's advocate in one way, because you have to try and look at it from the side of, just saying it without ever saying who said it, you know, it's a little bit difficult for Carlow to even defend themselves. But if it was said, and if it was like it sounds there like it's one person who said it, rather than kind of a raft of people being accused of it. But if it was said, it's absolutely horrible. And obviously, there's no place for it. But it's just a very difficult one to even talk about. So I suppose we might as well move on from it at that point. But just to acknowledge that story is rumbling on and might actually continue on in the next while. Division 2B, Donegal beat London by 316 to 8 points. Mayo and Wicklow drew 215 apiece. Your former team, Evergreen, Andy O'Brien comes on and saves Wicklow's bacon. Derry beat Sligo 214 to 14 points. Division 3A, Monaghan 112, Warwickshire 2-8, Roscommon 20 points, Tyrone 117 a draw, and Armagh beat Louth Narley 216 to 312. 3B, Leitrim beat Lancashire 416 to 2-8, and Armagh off Cavan 120 to 13 points. The Hogan Cup final, so St. Joseph's got the job done. St. Joseph's of Tulla, what a fairy tale season for them. And I know for players like Ronan and Oisin O'Connor, they've had a tough time losing both of their parents, and positive, like obviously nothing will ever make up for that, but like a positive, joyful day for them after a tough time. So I mean, congratulations to them and the team. Like 4 or 5 of these players, they were in the Clare team that was beaten by 40 points last year to Cork. So this is huge for them. Like that's a great story for Tulla.
Sounds like just an unbelievable turnaround. From what I was reading, they hadn't won a Harty Cup game up until this year. And it looked like they were a beaten docket in a couple of games earlier on. And then all of a sudden, they've got on this crazy run. And even and it happens so often, you know, the footage was going around of Ardscoil Reach and third of CBS in the semi-final, and that unbelievable score. And you're just you can almost build up the narrative in your head of, sure, look at what Limerick have coming, and sure, Ardscoil Reach are this superpower. And the Tulla boys just ripped it up the other day, ripped up that script completely. And it's an absolutely great story for them. And the funny thing is as well, with the way Leinster has worked out, so Dublin South are in the final against Good Counsel. They cannot represent Leinster. So Kieran's are playing CBS tomorrow, I think, for the chance to represent Leinster in the All-Ireland quarterfinals. But you'd say like Tulla have a fair chance of going a couple of steps further and potentially winning a Crow Cup at this stage.
Maybe one of us misspoke there. Adrian Harty is saying, or Adrian McGrath saying Harty, you each, and obviously they won the Harty Cup. If I said something else, it's definitely a slip of the tongue. For St. Joseph's Tulla, Sean Whitcomb, he scored 10 points. Colin Cleary got 3, Derek Keogh with 2, Ronan O'Connor and Oisin Clune with a point apiece. For Ardscoil Reach, Niall O'Farrell scored 7, Rian O'Brien, Shane O'Brien, Declan Lynch, they all got a couple of points, and JJ Carey also added into it as well. So that is a brilliant achievement for them. And another shot in the arm for Clare. I think you and I both saw that video that was released, presentation by the Clare under-20 manager in terms of like where Clare hurling are at, the sort of facilities that are provided, the food, I suppose even Caherlohan and stuff like that. So any shot in the arm that Clare can get as they try to get the house in order is massive there.
Only a couple of years since Flannan's won a Harty as well. So like maybe there's things maybe askew at county level, but there's still plenty of talent there. Obviously, the raw materials are there.
Yeah, and as Flash says here, Ardscoil Reach have a good few Clare lads on their team too. So yeah, I'm just looking at the team there, and there are a couple of the likes of Shamie Gully in goals, Colin Flynn cornerback. There's a couple more involved there as well. So we'll have to talk about the All-Ireland club finals. The Naas getting the victory over Kilmoyley, 16 points to 111. Jack Sheridan with 4 points. Brian Byrne, he really stood out in that first half. He scored 3, as did Shane Ryan. Rian Bourne with a couple. Simon Lacey and James Burke, they also had 2 apiece. For Kilmoyley, Daniel Collins had 7. Darren Nolan got the goal. Jordan Brick with 2 points. And Morris O'Connor and Paddy O'Connor with 1 apiece. So Naas have landed. They've won that All-Ireland.
Big time, and Brian Byrne just shows you that you can do media the week of an All-Ireland final and it's not going to affect you. He ended up man of the match the other day. Actually ended up with the ball in his hand at the final whistle as well, which was pretty appropriate. Darren Nolan got a goal, it was about 52, 53 minutes, and it looked like it was kind of against the run of play. There were 5 or a couple down at the time, and it looked like it was going to bring them back into the game, but they actually didn't score thereafter. While Naas had a couple of maybe jittery moments at the end, they were able to stay kind of powering forward, and they were the better team overall, in fairness to them, and fully deserved a win. But it was great to see. It was great to see Kildare cohort, hurling cohort, and a Kerry hurling cohort in Crow Park. I know Niall McIntyre put out a video during the week of he went down to around Kilmiley just talking to a lot of the people down there about what hurling means to them, and it's just great to see it as well. Like one of the fathers, one of the players was saying that if there was a hurling match on the telly, they'd be watching that even if Kerry were playing Dublin outside in football. Like that's there are tiny pockets, and those pockets are there in Donegal, and they're there in Mayo as well, and they're obviously there in Kildare too. But a great win for Naas, and they were deserved winners in fairness. And it's going to be really interesting. I don't know if they go up to senior level now. I'd expect that they would. I know in Camogie you have to win 2 All-Irelands to go up, but I'd expect that they will go up to senior level. And while it won't be a seamless transition, the age profile that they have coming, and as Brian Byrne said last week, all these Naas teams, underage teams that played in Kilkenny, none of those guys have really filtered through to senior level. So it looks like it's only going to get stronger in Naas. Once they're another example, struggled in a couple of county finals. Remember, we were beaten by Ardclough in 2017, I think, and bullied a bit and out-muscled. And now, a couple of years later, they're over the line and they're winning on Ireland Intermediate. Savage achievement.
Yeah, Richie Fitzsimon says, junior game was a cracker. What a winning score. Yeah, so that scoreline there. Mooncoin, 22 points. Ballygiblin, 118. Mooncoin were up by a point deep into injury time at the end of the game. Martin O'Neill cuts over a once-in-a-lifetime glorious sideline. I mean, who hasn't been down in the park and imagined cutting over a sideline or hitting a free or whatever score to win a game? He cuts it over. Obviously, Ballygiblin have time to get one more point. But because they do, that ends up being the winning score for Martin O'Neill. And I have to say, the part that, obviously what a brilliant score, but his celebration, you could see he was going nuts. He was so happy.
He was giving it the big one, and I wouldn't blame him. That's dream scenario. You just, whatever about Joe Canning or Austin Gleeson doing it in a big marquee inter-county game, to do it in an All-Ireland Junior finals, just unbelievable. And poor old Adam Croke is getting totally outdone by his teammate, because Adam Croke got a point off his hurl on the 13-yard line just before that. It was an absolutely outrageous score. Had no reason to be taking it on at all, and did, and put it over. And that put them 2 up, and then Ballygiblin went down and got it to 1, and then O'Neill put this over, and then it was 1 in it again. But 2 absolute cracking games in Croker on Saturday night. And Martin O'Neill's point was, if ever a point was a fitting winner, that was a fitting winner.
It certainly was. Leinster Intermediate Camogie final. St. Ryan's, they win 4 in a row. In the the Littlewoods Ireland Camogie Division 1, Galway and Offaly, that game was cancelled. Tipperary beat down 3-16 to 3 points, so no hassle there. Kilkenny saw off Limerick by 8 points, 118 to 110. Division 2, Cork lost to Wexford, 9 points to 14. The Meath team, they had a 3-8 to 3-5 win over Derry. Waterford beat Westmeath 14 points to 4. Kilkenny saw off Tipperary 3-8 to 7, and Galway Laois was also cancelled.
Just quickly on that, Shane, just a worrying thing with the Camogie over the weekend. A couple of games cancelled essentially because of a lack of numbers within counties, which is really, really worrying. Now, there is probably a bit of a caveat with it. There's, Camogie is a little bit different than hurling. They would be pulling some girls from school like that, or maybe in 5th and 6th year. And that's kind of carrying over at the moment. There's colleges going on at the moment. There's still club going on. Like, Offaly don't have any access to any of the Rhinos players at the moment, and they're just that's basically gutting their squad at the moment. But I don't know if the Camogie Association need to look at the timing of their competitions and put everything back a couple of weeks to make sure that they're not overlapping with other competitions. They shouldn't necessarily be following the same template as the GAA, because the competitions are a little bit different. But it's not a good look for teams to be, essentially conceding walkovers due to lack of numbers.
Yeah, I'm just throwing up the link there for anyone who's watching on Twitter on the live comments. Patreon.com/OurGame. If you want to see Thursday's show, it takes about 2 minutes to sign up to it, and just works out at around 50 cents a show over the course of the year. We're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. And there's a huge range of jerseys, including the ones that we're wearing here. Now, we'll finish up on one final point. Michael Verney, who is your goat of the week?
I'm going to let you have it first, because I need to think quickly while you're talking.
Okay. Well, for hurling, I think we just talked about there, Martin O'Neill of Mooncoin. That sideline cut from a bus ride away has to give him the goat of the week. That was just such a brilliant score to win an All-Ireland. So he's my pick. And look, it's not really necessarily for what he did on the football field, and he did have a good game, Neil Forrester for Steelestown, Brian Oakes. But just that speech, that would, as Michael Fennelly once famously said in his Hurler of the Year speech, it would make the hairs on your backside stand up. I know, it was absolutely brilliant. But your picks.
No, do you know what? Poor old Adam Croke was overlooked. I'm going to give it to him for his point at the end of the junior final. He's been overlooked by his teammate Martin O'Neill, but both equally really, really classy scores when the pressure was on the most. And I give it to him. Fair play to Moonkind. I know we have a couple of big fans of the channel that are from Moonkind. So Richard Hogan, I hope you have a sore head this morning, and I hope the Moonkind boys will have fairly sore heads for the next week or so.
Yeah, he's commenting there, double goat, and absolutely well earned. So that's it for today's show. Remember, I put the link up there, patreon.com/OurGame. Do join us for the Thursday show. We'll have loads more to talk about. There are a massive amount of games coming, and we're going to cover them all here. Thanks very much, Michael Verney. We'll talk to you later.
Cheers, Shane.